and welcome to the Administration, Finance, and Recreation and Parks Committee for January 11th, 2022. Of course, we want to acknowledge our elected officials, Mayor Kurt Wilson, Mayor Pro Tem Michael Palermo, Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember Lee Hills, and Councilmember William Morthland. The purpose of committee meetings are for the city departments to convey information to the mayor and city council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, members of city council, and the city administrator. The ordinance does mention the city administrator as the chair of committee meetings. And while this is a public meeting, it's not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, we do not take public comments or questions during committee meetings. Public comments or questions are received at the regular city council meetings held in the city council chambers at 7:00 p.m. on the second and fourth Monday of each month. And then on the fifth Monday of each month, there is an open forum. We certainly do encourage citizens to engage our online platforms. And if you have questions or need information regarding any matter, our staff is available to provide that information to you. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Administration, Finance, and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting for December 14th, 2021. With that, I will entertain a motion for approval of those minutes. Okay, motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Hall.
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Palermo. Any further discussion regarding that matter? If not, all those in favor? Carries unanimously. Thank you so much. The next item on the agenda is the consideration of a resolution to adopt revisions to certain sections of City of Roswell Human Resources Policies and Procedures Manual.
Thank you so much, Mr. Knight.
Yes, sir.
This is an item that we really do annually. A lot of it has to do with just policies with legal implications for our HR policy. We have our HR Director, Jim Harner, and Andrew Ross are with us today to discuss some of these changes and answer any questions that you may have.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, this is an item that we bring to you periodically because you all are the ones that approve changes, minor, major changes to the Human Resources Policies and Procedure Manual. We try to save some of the minor ones and bring them to you instead of one at a time annually, as Michael said, or semi-annually. But some of these are, a few of them, for legal, regulatory reasons. Others are more for just, the majority of them, for clarification, terminology, even punctuation, grammar, that kind of thing. And then this time around, we do have about a third of the proposed changes are IT related. Our new IT director got in and brought us up to speed, up to current practices regarding security and system integrity, that kind of thing. So Andrew Ross, also in Human Resources, is joining me, and he'll give you an overview and certainly answer any questions you have.
Mayor and Council. So as Mr. Harner said, I'm just going to bring a few to your attention. All means, of course, any questions through any of them on here, be happy to answer. Most of these are going to be updating some small things here and there. The first couple that I'll like to bring your attention, I'm not going to go through all of these, but by all means, of course, if we need to, we can. We've got a couple of law updates that are on there. We've updated a couple of policies to match with guidelines by the CDC and the Department of Health. As you can see in 1.28.1, both B and E. Obviously, as we all know, those are constantly changing, but we're doing our best to keep up with it, and these two policies will help us stay in those guidelines. Several of the policies that you'll see through here are there to help make sure that throughout the entire policy manual that everything matches. As you can see in 3.9 and 3.10, that's a lot of what those two are. We do have one new policy that I'd like to just make sure we point out is 10.2.4 on the second page of that matrix for you. We are adding a policy that will provide special PTO hours for full-time exempt employees that work holiday events. We're also changing the policies to match some upgrades to our timekeeping systems to where we will now be able to clock quarter-hour increments for PTO and sick time. There's a few policies that are changed with that rule. Then I'm going on to the third page here to look at, you can see where chapter 14 starts. And again, that's going to be the IT policy with our IT director, Chris Zach, has gone through and made a lot of good changes so that way we're staying up to date for safety and security. I'm not going to go through those one by one, to be honest with you. I'd have to get his help on those to explain some of them. But then at the very last page is bring to your attention one of the things we're doing is with leased vehicles now. We made sure to include those in our policy for coverage for vehicle ownership when it comes to liability and other means of that matter. So, other questions about any of them?
Any questions of the mayor and council? Comments?
I'm glad to make a comment.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. Yeah, microphone did just.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Considering the comprehensive nature of all the items that we are addressing, the employee handbook to me looks like it has a degree of complexity that would be commensurate with any corporate or government organization. But my assumption looking through here is that there are a lot of policies that may not be in line with where we may be from a political perspective of how we would like the city seen by other residents. And I don't, this is a matter that is a smaller matter in terms of priorities, so I have some hesitation about even getting into it. But just reading through it, I would say that from a governance perspective, there are some things that I would think if we were sitting around having a conversation, we'd probably say, I don't know if this is in line where the residents are. So I'm asking your help here because there's some stuff in here that should be tackled, just going through it. But we got bigger fish to fry. But there's stuff here that we're signing off on. They do not, it's not in, it's definitely where corporate governance is, city governance is, but I don't think it's where our residents are. So if we were to break this down and start distilling it down in a side conversation, I don't think we'd be signing off on this.
What would be the time frame you'd recommend for deferral to come back to committee?
That's the problem. We got so many big things actually to deal with. Dealing with this is we are signing off on some things I think that we would say behind the scenes we would not be cool with. And so the relevant question is, if you defer it, obviously you can come back and address it. We defer it, we're going to forget about it.
You could always defer it to the February or March committee meeting.
I don't think we'll be ready to deal with it then. Considering what we're going to be dealing with in February and January. So I'm asking your counsel and advice, guys. What do you think? Because if we go through this, I'm telling you, I'm just looking at it. There's stuff here we would chop up.
Yes. Councilmember Hills.
Mayor Wilson, so do you have a suggestion of how to tackle that alternatively? Or do you want to just,
Sign off and move on?
no, I didn't say that. Do you have an alternative?
I don't, not without deferring it. And deferring it becomes a non-practical matter for the city because, well, there's some things in here we'd probably sign off and say, yes, update, we're good. But I think the more we get into it, there's some things we probably say, some stuff that needs some stuff that needs some addressing from a governance perspective. So I guess I'm asking for some great wisdom. My perspective is sign off, move on, address in July. That's probably what I would suggest. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
As part of some of the things that we plan on tackling over the next 2 to 4 years, perhaps we could do an overhaul of the employee handbook as part of that. Possibly do this modification now to be in compliance with IT and some of the other things that have been identified, and then look at addressing the entire employee handbook.
Councilmember Hall, that's an excellent idea.
All right, yes, Councilmember Morthland.
Okay. Is there anything in here with the changes that are time sensitive to right now? Or do we have the luxury of following the direction they're speaking?
Well, I would say having our policy being in line with Supreme Court decision and current things saying that we'll, I think that would be really the only one that we would need to absolutely do right now. You think of any others?
Outside of the Supreme Court, I know the IT is another
Yeah.
thing, just to update to make sure we are in line with current concerns out there with the IT world.
There are some items that are applicable via state and federal law, and typically we want to update those. And then, of course, with the changing IT world, which changes virtually every day, I want to make sure that we're consistent and compliant with those. Obviously, per the comments that were raised earlier, if it is that there are specific items, perhaps, that members of the council may want to see addressed during the course of the year. But I think what I heard was taking a look at the entirety of the employee handbook in total, and then determining what needs to be addressed from a holistic standpoint.
Mr. Knighton, that is exactly correct. And I think Councilmember Hall says it better, much better, which is, let's put it on, here's the challenge. It's a small potato. Frankly, it's a small potato. But I would challenge us, as part of our governance, that we do have a responsibility to address it, particularly if it's not in alignment, direct alignment with where we see the residents of our city. So, that being said, I would say sign off, since we're being asked to be sign off, and address, put a timetable to come back and address it as a full document, instrumentation. Does that make sense?
If that being the case, if there are any further questions or comments, so I would assume that everyone is in favor of moving forward and moving this forward for approval, with the understanding that there will be a comprehensive analysis of the employee handbook. I'm assuming by the end of the calendar year, or is there a time frame that the council feels comfortable designating?
I would defer to Councilmember Hills as far as a time frame that she might be comfortable with, and taking the opportunity to address that perhaps by third quarter.
All right. All right, okay, all right. With that, we'll call for a motion to move this item forward.
Motion to move this forward.
All right, that was a motion by Councilmember Hills. Is there a second? Second by Mayor Wilson. And any further discussion? All those in favor? All right, thank you. It carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item, item number 3, is consideration of a resolution to submit a 2022 governmental units grant proposal to the Georgia Power Foundation in the amount of $6,738.75.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. Megan Boynton is our grants project coordinator. If you haven't had a chance to meet her yet, you get that chance tonight, and she's going to talk to you about applying for a grant to hopefully be able to answer a need that we have had in the city that will help out with our grant writing and our nonprofits to be able to grant write.
Thank you, Michael. Mayor, council members, Mr. Knighton. This is a request for a resolution to apply for a grant to the Georgia Power Foundation. They do have a governmental units division where they entertain grant applications. The money would be put towards a set of digital tools available at the Roswell branch of the Fulton County Library, right across the street from us at City Hall. And this set of digital tools is called the Foundation Directory Online. It is frequently used by grants professionals, but can also be used by individuals, including students looking for scholarships, to be able to find the foundations, whether they're public or private, in this database. It was previously made available by the Foundation Center, which then merged with GuideStar and has become Candid. So this suite of tools would be paid for a period of 3 years. We would like to see a 3-year subscription if possible to get the community familiar with the tool and accustomed to using it. We can then determine how much use it has received and whether or not we would like to continue thereafter with the library as our partner or other nonprofits who would be interested in sharing the cost with us. The total amount for 3 years is $8,900. We have proposed that we put in 25% at $2,200, so any grant received would be for $6,700.
Any questions or comments? Yes.
Unless there's any further questions from this committee, I motion to approve.
Motion to approve. By Councilmember Palermo, seconded by Councilmember Vanstrom. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, thank you. Item number 4, consideration to award a contract to B&W Mechanical Contractors Incorporated for citywide on-call plumbing services in an annual amount not to exceed $75,000 with annual renewal options for a maximum of 3 years.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. And this item is one that we've gone out for bids for. You've seen it from some of the other, or you'll see it from some of the other departments also where they go out for on-call contractors. We have that same need within our building operations department, division, and our director, Art Lewis, will give you this information and answer any questions.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Yes, the staff recommends B&W Mechanical Contractors out of the 5 proposals we've had.
Any questions? All right. Any questions of council? Yes, Councilmember Hall.
I have a question. This is $75,000 to just have somebody be on call, or does this cover any work?
It's up to, we will spend up to $75,000 as they come in to do work. So we pre-qualify contractors so that if we have a plumbing issue, we don't have to go out for bids every time. We go out for once each. When we have these, like this will be for a 3-year term, so we can call them when we have a plumbing issue. They've already told us what their pricing is going to be, what their margin will be over what the cost is, but we won't spend more than $75,000 in a year on these plumbing things without coming back to you all. We may not spend anything if we have no plumbing issues, but this way we don't have to do it for every time we want to go out for a contractor.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Morthland.
Does this cover emergency services as well?
It does. And they have a time in the RFP that was put out, they do have a time to respond for after hours and for emergencies.
Who's checking up behind these guys to make sure they're doing it right?
That's our building officer.
Art, is it possible that you spend $0?
Doubtful.
No, sorry, poor question. If they don't come, you spend zero. Correct. If you don't have any calls, so you need an
If it's something we
authorization.
can handle, we'll take care of it in-house,
So, but you
including
can,
all the departments.
you're just saying, hey, we need $75,000 to, we need up to $75,000 to handle our plumbing.
Right.
Is that what that's it? Is that what you're saying?
They have a typical annual amount. Fiscal year was like 141,000 average over the years.
Here at Roswell,
But that's what we're saying.
they had $141,000 average.
That's what we
That's
average through
average.
years, so what we're
For the
saying
last-
is for our on-call contractor, we'll spend up to 75,000. If it gets more than that, we'll start letting you all know that. But if we don't use them, we don't pay anything.
Councilmember Hall.
So just so that I'm clear, if we had a plumbing issue, you would call the on-call contractor, and they basically, for any job, individual job that's under 75,000, you just write them a check. They come out and say, this fix was 40 grand, and you just write them a check for 40 grand. If there's any one item that is greater than 75,000, you would come and ask for an emergency funding.
That's correct.
Thank
That's
you.
correct. And that's per our policy, up to $75,000. And that's why we competitively bid it one time, so we don't have to do it if we have a need right now without declaring an emergency.
Any further questions? Yes, Councilmember Vanstrom.
Just real quickly in reading this, I still am not understanding completely clear. We have our own plumbing services, or not? We have none.
We have maintenance personnel that can handle most of the small items. Anything major comes up, we can't handle, we'll call it that.
Okay, and then the average you said annually that you have spent in the past is about 140,000.
I believe that was an average of 3 or 5 years.
Over the last 3 to 5
For
years.
plumbing issues that you had to outsource. Okay, I just wanted clarification, thanks.
All right. All right. Any further question or comment? All right, seeing none. Yes, Councilmember Portland.
Just curiosity, how much better was this bid than the other bids that were obtained? Far and away, but
We based it on the qualifications more than money. We used the background and experience mostly, and qualifications was the most, 40%. Cost was the least. We wanted to make sure we had a qualified company.
They all went through a scoring sheet, so I don't have in front of us what the percentages were, but they were all scored based on the weighted average of a couple of different items. Yes.
Yes, Councilmember Hills.
So that's about half of what we average per year. Is that enough?
It is, we don't, we could go out for more than that, and we may use them, but if we start getting up that much, we'd rather go back out and get some quotes on it just to be sure.
Okay.
Any further question or comment from the elected body? Seeing none, we would entertain a motion to move this item forward at this time.
A motion to move forward with this item.
All right, motion by Councilmember Hills. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Morthland. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. All right, we have no action items from the Finance Department. There is some information in your packet, just informational items in your packet regarding budget, but no action items from Finance. Next, we do have Recreation and Parks, item number 5. Consideration to submit a 2022 Fulton County Arts and Culture contract for services request to support Roswell's Dia de los Muertos event. Thank you, sir. Mr. Leatherman.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton and Mayor and Council. Chris Ward, our Special Event Services Manager, will be providing the presentation. I'll run support if she needs it.
Thank you and good evening. This evening, I'd like to review a grant that the Special Events Division would like to apply for. It is a matching grant, so I'd like to kind of go through the grant for y'all and discuss what we'd like to do with the monies, and then any questions that we have after that. What is the grant? So it's the Contracts for Services program, and it seeks to strengthen the cultural health of individuals, organizations, and communities by awarding funding and providing technical assistance to nonprofit organizations whose arts programming supports arts and cultural services to Fulton County residents. So some of the bullet points in this grant were that we thought we could hit on were as serving as a catalyst for capacity building and stabilizing arts and cultural organizations throughout the county, encouraging the highest standards of artistic quality and excellence, and creating an environment that encourages the growth of the arts. The request for the matching grant, we will be looking to support Dia de los Muertos. That's also known as Day of the Dead. It's a holiday that's centered around the remembrance of lost loved ones. The festival allows communities to come together to celebrate their memory and pray for their safe spiritual journey. The city of Roswell hosted the first Dia de los Muertos back in 2019, but we were unable to bring it back in 2020 due to the COVID pandemic. This past year's festival was presented, and we were in partnership with the Consulate General of Mexico, and we used COVID relief funds. Those funds amounted to $20,000. We were also able to secure a $5,000 sponsorship from Hornitos. The city is seeking to expand and supplement our annual programming, increasing our community presence and messaging to all residents and attendees. So what is the purpose of our request? First, we'd like to expand our own event, Dia de los Muertos. We'd like to increase the authentic entertainment at Dia de los Muertos. That's the mariachi bands or the Aztec dancers. We'd also like to increase the size of the event, allowing more participation from our food and food vendors and our regular vendors. And we would like to increase the participation of local schools and churches. Additionally, we'd like to collaborate and work with our cultural arts division. Becky Hawkins is the manager, and I reached out, and some of the ideas that they had were broad-based, but we dig into that more. They would like to do things like have Sonia D. Los Santos and friends. She's a bilingual children's musician. We'd like to maybe obtain the Hispanic Inventors exhibit, which is a traveling exhibit that comes and showcases several Hispanics and displays them in chronological order from the 1800s to the present. There is an idea to do some kind of exhibit down at the River Walk honoring Dia de los Muertos, and then have an actual program at the Cultural Arts Center with a live mariachi band. So some of the partnerships that we've had over the past year that we've obtained was the Mexican Consulate in Atlanta, Atlanta History Museum, Vaca International, Atlanta Foundation for Public Spaces, and Hornitos. And these are people that have joined us and helped support us both financially and in kind with their participation. It also meets the proposed Dia de los Muertos addresses the city's strategic plan, and that's the exceptional quality of life. It delivers exceptional community facilities, programs, events, partnerships, parks, and trails, which promote community vitality and exceptional livability, thereby creating a sense of belonging for all residents, business, and visitors. We do have a few pictures from this past Dia de los Muertos that we held in last October. It was a very miserably rainy, cold day, but we all survived, and there's still, as you can see, quite a few really colorful participants. So our request is consideration to submit a 2022 Fulton County Arts and Culture Contract for Services request to support Roswell's Dia de los Muertos event, and we're requesting a matching fund of $25,000. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you. Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Mr. Knight, is there a time, is there something time sensitive about the grant?
We have to have the grant in by the January 31st. To go for the grant itself. So the deadline of applying for the grant is January 31st of this month.
Is that paperwork already prepared and ready to go?
Well, we started it. It's just I just didn't want to do too much until I was sure that we would match the grant.
How long does it take to do the paperwork?
I'm going to have the help of Danny Glitch, so I'm hoping probably a day at the most, a couple days. I've pulled a lot of information, we know a lot about what we want to do. I've spoken with Becky from Cultural Arts, so I think we could pull it together in a couple days.
So the most important part about submitting it now is because you really would want to submit for the grant. That's really the timing issue, is that correct?
Yes.
And so basically,
Sorry, do you need a resolution of authorization from council?
Yes.
So part of the grant packet would require us to bring a resolution to your next council meeting on the 24th that you would have to authorize our application in order to submit a complete package. So this would be the first step. If we were to move forward from this meeting, we have to come to council to have that authorization and the resolution approved.
comment to the rest of the council. So certainly see the wisdom of pursuing these kind of opportunities, makes sense to me. My question is where it fits into our strategy from the standpoint of what we've got going on from a Master Arts project perspective, which we are still in the process of putting together. So this to me looks like, and I'm sure we're going to have some of these, looks like one-offs, which means we're supporting one-offs, but they may not be in strategic alignment of what we're trying to get done at the end of the day. So it would be, yes, sir.
Councilmember Palermo.
They're still tough to use, so you're all doing a great job tonight. And so, Mayor, certainly wanted to kind of make sure hear all your thoughts, and I think a good, kind of discussion to have. I think big picture, what I want to share that I think is both related purely to this one-off as well as related to your bigger picture question is basically how this originated was probably back in around 2018, 2019, I forget what it was, but basically I came to this committee and I requested that there be it's actually from feedback and suggestions I got from Roswell business owners that said, and I never got the exact details, how much of this was definitely the case versus not, but it was described as if you're a business, it was much easier to set up an event and host an event in Alpharetta than it was in Roswell, and that might be an exaggeration, and of course, again, I haven't seen the data and details to really compare, but basically I came to this committee with the goal of saying, look, I'd like the idea of pulling some people together, some business owners, those that have held events, et cetera, and find out how do we make it easier in Roswell for someone to host an event? So how do we make it easier for the private sector, whether it's, Mac McGee's host an event, we've got, of course, Bike Roswell hosts an event. We have all these different event groups, but how do we make it easier? And then ultimately, the reason being is I think there are advantages to having a lot of great events in Roswell. I think as we're looking at being that family-friendly destination, we want a place that we're proud of, that's really fun for us and our family. And I think events are definitely connected to that. I'd say separate from this, and I planned on mentioning, even if the mayor didn't bring up his good points to help us level set, is I still would like to get from staff and really understand what can we make easier, more efficient, et cetera, just for any business, any nonprofit, et cetera, to want to host an event in Roswell. But back to this, my thought process is, I think there are advantages to having events. I will say $50,000 is certainly a lot more money than I had realized was going into this event. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less, but seeing this match, and if there is the opportunity for matching funds, knowing that I certainly see benefits in additional events, I like the idea of going for it. And then of course, if we don't get this matching grant, then I think it gives us a chance to take a step back and really look at big picture. What are our big picture goals and how we're accomplishing those? If that somewhat addresses what you're talking about.
Oh, Councilmember Vanstrom, yes.
It's pretty easy to turn on. Just right and touch it.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Well, if I could just expand on what was being discussed, what $50,000 was spent last year on this event?
No, about a $20,000 budget last year.
Okay.
And that was funded, so we have a combination of city-produced special events, 4th of July, end of summer. Alive in Roswell is generally funded through sponsorships in the business community. So And then we have our permitted events, which, to council members' point, has kind of a different process where groups and organizations would come in and request a permit, and then they would supplement the cost of city services associated with that permit, like Roswell, others. In this case, this is a city-produced event similar to our 4th of July or some of the others that we've done. And the COVID relief money is what we use to fund this in the past year. And so what we're considering or asking for is the $25,000, which is essentially the same investment on a matching basis, but then we would be able to leverage and expand that to the $50,000 budget. The other piece of the puzzle here is expanding the offerings beyond just the day of celebration itself that we had here at City Hall, and incorporating in our Cultural Services Division that would expand some of the offerings into the Cultural Arts Center, where we would have multiple days similar and along the same lines that we use with our Roswell Root celebration in February for Black History Month. So,
Okay, so
using that same model.
All right, so that's starting to clarify. My second question would be, so obviously the fund match, the limit's 25, so you want to go for 25 because that's the most you can attain, and that makes sense. Secondly, though, if the money is not completely used for the event itself, which I would hope it wouldn't be at 50,000, then that money can be earmarked for other purposes within
The grant portion of it could not, because that is a specific application for the event itself. The general fund portion, and we would have to look at exactly how the matching fund criteria would work. So let's just, for example, say we only spent $40,000. We would use $20,000 of the grant, $20,000 of matching. We have $5,000 left over from the city general fund that could be reallocated to a different event. But the grant does not have that flexibility. It is specific to the criteria in the application of the grant. Does that make sense?
So 25 would have to be spent.
25 or less
On the event.
on the event.
Then the city's match could be utilized for other, you might have lost me on that.
So if, right now what we're asking for is a total budget of $50,000. But if we were approved and we execute the event and the total budget is only $40,000, we would have $25,000 allocated by the city's general fund as matching money. But we would only use 20,000 of that because you have 20 and 20 that you match. We can't reallocate the grant money because we don't have that flexibility, but we can the city's general fund. Does that make sense?
Mayor Wilson.
It would be my recommendation, council, that two things. One is, well, first let me ask you a question. How do you feel about the $20,000 that was spent on this event last year? Councilman Hill, sorry.
That was going to be a question of mine. Given the horrible weather and the rave reviews I heard from the year prior, I didn't attend either one, but I was disappointed for those that wanted to attend this year. So that being a big deal, how does that impact that budget? So I have a sidecar to that. Like, how did you spend that whole budget, or how did that work out?
Yes. We did run into a little problem because of the weather, so we had to, the day before, we had to purchase more weights and tenting. So some of that funds did go to that. But the funds are spent on the entertainment, the porta potties, the tents, the stage. And yes, we did spend it all. So that's why we're thinking if we have a grant, we can even make it larger for, the entertainment, and expand what we were doing currently.
Yes, Councilmember Hall?
Thank you. I attended both in 19 and last year. In 19, what did we spend on it in 19, the first year we did it?
I believe it was closer to 30,000. So in 2019, we also had an organizer that came, and it was sort of a permitted event. And then as we kind of worked through it, we wanted to make it more of a cultural experience as opposed to some organizers, they want to make money off of it more than just a drinking event where people come and are buying drinks for tequila tasting. So we kind of retooled it while we were in COVID and thought about what we wanted to do. That's why we reached out to the consulate. We wanted to make it really culturally appropriate. We wanted to concentrate on the entertainment, on the vendors, on the altar that we put up, that we had put up. So we probably spent a little less this time because we didn't have an organizer who was kind of thrown in at the alcohol bar part. If that makes sense.
There was quite a bit of alcohol at this one with the
Yeah.
tequila
Well,
tasting and
Dia
all
de
of
los
that.
Muertos is also a tequila event. I mean, you know, we tried to steer toward the idea of, like I said, the altars and all that, but it also, part of the Hispanic community believe in the whole, you know, the tequila and the putting it by the grave and cheering to the lost souls and stuff like that. So we have to keep.
Councilmember Palermo?
I have a couple thoughts. I mean, first of all, going back to the high level thing that the mayor brought up earlier, I think something that as we do as a mayor and council, set policy and set vision, I think a big part of that too is for the future of where should the focus be on when trying to get which grants to really prioritize. You know, is it events? Is it sidewalks? Is it parks? Is it resurfacing, whatever that might be. And I think that's something historically that's not been done. From my experience, there's not been really a setting. This is priority type grants, whether it's dollar amounts or purposes. That's something I think this mayor and council should do. As for the events, I did not go to the rainy one. I did go to the good weather one in 2019. It was definitely a great, sunny day. A lot of people, a lot of energy. I'd say given the fact that we have the grant potential in front of us, I'd feel more comfortable if we considered supporting applying for the grant, but not automatically just supporting the dollar amount where if the grant is not achieved, then we automatically just say, oh, okay, well, I guess we'll just still give that total amount. I feel more comfortable if it was a focus on seeing if we can get that grant first. And in general, part of that comes back to the origin of how this came about, which is my preference is, again, finding ways where it's easier for the private sector, nonprofit sector, et cetera, to host events and not necessarily just automatically have the city funding so many of them. But that's where I stand at the moment.
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Michael, thank you, Mr. Knight. So several things. One is, congratulations, thank you for pursuing grant money. Thank you. I think that's smart. I think that's good policy. I think that's good strategy. Second part of that is, though, that doesn't mean you should pursue something from our perspective. I think until we have a grander understanding of what the entire calendar looks like for our purposes of our intentional planning and strategy and understanding what the plan looks like. Third part of that is I think there should be benchmarks as part of that planning. So if we're going to do an event, regardless, and this falls within your purview, my perspective from a master planning perspective is every event should have strategic targets of what success looks like. Whether that's 200 people, 150 people, where those people come from, what are we trying to do with that event? What does success look like? What does failure look like? So if we have failure, we can say, we didn't do what we wanted to, here's how we're going to make a distinction next year going forward. I think that should be part of the planning process. I think also part of the planning process is, what does success look like? And for me, from a perspective of strategy is, yes, we need to have a calendar where we have a complete understanding of what your planning is from the standpoint of this are the events we want to hold this year. And two, this is what they look like. This is what success looks like to us. This is what failure looks like to us. So we have clarity from that standpoint. For me, when I deal with a gross number and I hear a 25 and a 25, it's very seductive to pursue the 25 based upon, sounds like a good deal. But it kind of misses the point for me of what we ultimately are after, I think, for the city and our residents. Because at the end of the day, if you spent 50 grand and you had 150 people show up at the event, and we were here this time next year, I don't think you'd say, that was a good call. So I think we need some more specifics, probably as a council and mayor, to say, this is what it's going to look like. This is why it's going to make a difference to the city. This is why it's a good investment for us to spend $25,000. That would be my recommendation.
Yes, Councilmember Morthland.
So to piggyback off of what Mayor Wilson is saying, we've hosted this event for 2 years in a row, or two minus the COVID break. So if we don't do this, are we still expected to host next year? Is this something that people are looking forward to? Is this being advertised? Is this heavily sought after? The reason I'm saying that is if we don't go after the grant and we miss that opportunity, we're still going to be on the hook for receiving $20,000 or $25,000 down the road to do this event. Correct?
So the council has the purview within your budgeting process to set priorities. And if the council chooses to not fund a special event like this or others, that is your policy decision. And anything that we've done in the past from a special event and funding perspective, from my opinion, doesn't obligate you to continue those. Now, we could issue a permit for somebody else that wanted to provide that same type of event. But as Chris described when we did that the first time, you start to lose some of the potential control over the goals and intent of the event itself. And to the mayor's point, then you have less opportunity to drive at the purpose and or the desired outcomes. Because now you're issuing a permit and it's their value system, whomever is running that event, that's driving at those permitted and the outcomes that they're trying to accomplish. In that case, it could be just turning $1 into $2, and it's a revenue generation that's leveraging City Hall and the history of the event that we've had and the branding that we've already put together for an opportunity for more of a commercialized celebration and activity. And so while you're not obligated, there is the brand. We don't start our advertisement process for this event until the middle of the summertime. So, we'll continue to work on things, but ultimately it's the budget that drives it to those priority decisions from year to year in our planning process. I would say the one kind of marker and caveat to all of that is 4th of July is the day after, or 3 days after your technical budget goes into place. And so there's some of those events that we push forward in the planning process, and it would be very problematic to wait until the springtime to plan 4th of July. We've already started that process. Riverside Sounds is similar in some of those others. So to the mayor's point, the priorities over the long run are helpful because we run closer to about a 12 to 18 month planning cycle with our large special events as you set direction through your budget process.
Councilmember Palermo, I believe I saw your hand.
Thank you, and so appreciate it. And to Councilman Morthland's question though, so at the moment, it's not funded, not advertised, and so unlike, of course, July 4th, although that's not funded and advertised yet, I think it's fair to expect that all residents are expecting we are hosting July 4th, but just want to make sure that was definitely, I saw you nodding your head, yes. Thank you for the clarification.
Councilmember Hills.
Is there a way to have a special events background? Is there a way to look at leveling this out? I love this event. I think it adds a lot to our city, to our residents. Is there a way to level out an agreement where if you get the grant up to the 25, then that's what you have? I know that restricts you on some spending, but you know that we would cover up to that. I don't even know if I can ask for that. Cover up to that. I'd like to see us do this. We had a home run the first time, COVID the second year. Last year we got rained out. I mean, that's that has nothing to do with the talent behind putting it together, but it has everything to do with stabilizing the event. I mean, most people expect Memorial Day. Most people expect 4th of July. We have some expectations around here, and I feel like it would be a bummer if we canceled it, but having not lived in it for very long, any of us, I just wonder if there's a way we could, I hate to use the word cap, but cap the money that's right in the middle of what we're looking at that's been spent previously in order to stabilize what the expectations are for that event.
So the grant ceiling in this case is up to $50,000. And the match is a 1-for-1 match. And so we've kind of split the difference down the middle with the $25,000. The council, of course, can set the grant limit through your direction to staff to say we want to go up to $20,000 in a matching grant, which obligates $20,000 of the general fund if we were to be successful. So you have that ability to scale in this case because it's an up to grant limit of the 50. So as I said, we kind of split the difference at that 25 mark.
Councilmember Hall?
Do we have any partner organizations that can apply for the grant and do the event?
The couple groups that we work with is the consulate in Mexico, in Atlanta, and I would have to reach out to them and see if they are capable or they're able to do it. I'm unsure of that answer. Other than that, I'm not really certain unless we went back to a nonprofit who was an organizer and wanted to take it on, and then that would, as Mr. Leatherman said, they'd have to fund that match as well, and I don't think they're gonna probably want to.
The only reason I ask that is because that might be a way to leverage more money if another organization is applying for the grant and doing the matching funds, and the city could help supplement without having to be on the hook for the match, and we could help drive the expected return.
Mayor Wilson?
Permission to ask several people a question at the same time?
Sure.
Chris,
Yes.
if you had $25,000, your money, would you spend it on this event?
Yes.
Expecting what?
Expecting that it's going to be a great event and that I love this event and I think it has such potential, and I think we've only scratched the surface of this event. From even that day when it was raining, we still had a lot of people who showed up and were thankful and thanked us. The feedback that we got from the Mexican consulate saying this was the only city in North Fulton or Fulton County that does an event like this and that they were behind us 100%. For me, it makes my job worth it. That's what I'm about, is people. It's not about the money necessarily, it's about making people happy. And this event has that potential if we put the care and the money behind it.
Jeff, you got a gigantic bonus coming this year, but instead of getting the bonus, the $25,000 is going towards this project. Are you spending it?
Yeah. The change in our community as you look at the demographic changes over the last 10 years, with the census coming out, you see the continued growth of our Hispanic community. As somebody just with a teacher in my family, we're starting to see that at our elementary school levels. My wife teaches in the English as a Second Language program. Those programs are growing, even just in the last 3 years that we've been here in the city of Roswell. And so we see that demographic growing within our community, that this is an opportunity to connect with our Hispanic community here locally, that drives at opportunities beyond just the traditional activities of sports and athletics that we do with our youth and within our community. And so this has the option, as Chris said, and the opportunity to truly build beyond just the one-day event. And I think that's where you see our success with Roswell Roots and using that as an example, that it's beyond a one-time celebration. It expands into Hispanic Heritage Month, which is September-October timeframe. And now we're able to bring some thematic approaches to our music offerings in the Cultural Arts Center and other activities that we do beyond even just the one-day event. Unfortunately, to Councilmember Hill's point, the one thing we can't control is the weather. And I think that was one of the biggest impacts on this event and causing people not to come. When I was at the first event in 19, you couldn't find a parking spot here at City Hall, down the street, in the surrounding area. The place was packed. And people enjoyed an opportunity to be here on the grounds of City Hall.
Will, would you spend $25,000 of your money to put this event on?
I know if I shared this with my kids and they saw the Disney movie Coco, they would be very excited about that. That's how I'd answer the question.
Lee, would you spend $25,000 of your money?
Yes, but not more. Not yet.
Peter?
I'd match the 20 maybe from last year.
You'd match the 20? Councilman Palermo?
I'd say when there's the match opportunity, I think it does increase the value of the investment. I think, I think it's questionable. Is 20, is 25? the right number. And actually, I really loved Councilmember Hall's thought process of really, all the feedback you gave from the Mexican consulate and really looking for even better partnership opportunities.
Councilman Hall?
I would, but I think we can do better at leveraging and better at maybe pulling it off with other resources as well. But I think it's a great event.
Let me speak, since I'm being, obviously I love, it's always when I'm the minority of 0 or 1. There's no way I would personally spend $25,000 based upon the history of the event, based upon a feel-good process. If it doesn't have strategic alignment with strategic outcome of what it looks like. Jeff, I'm familiar with the demographics as well as everybody else, and demographics is not a reason to do an event. There has to be a measurable outcome of what that means for the city from my perspective. So if you ask me to spend $25,000 of my money, based upon what I've seen on this, I'd say there's no way I would spend $25,000. So I'm impressed by everybody's generosity, because we're asking the taxpayers to spend $25,000 of their money. So to me, that means, we're going to be asking for a lot more money, and you're going to be involved with a lot bigger money that we're going to be asking our fellow residents to spend a lot more money. But that doesn't mean $25,000 it's not nilly-willy. So I'm surprised everybody spent $25,000 personally, because I wouldn't, because I don't see a bangable return on this based upon what I've seen. Feel good is not enough. And that's not good enough for a city when you're asking your residents to spend money. So I think there need to be greater measurables with greater actual real outcomes of what success looks like and what failure looks like. So we can say that with clarity. Because if we don't, we're wasting each other's time. And feel good is not, we're not in the business of feel good. We're in the business of measurables. So I think that's important, particularly when we're talking about asking the taxpayers to spend $25,000. Because I know you're smart. I would say, why not spend 50? Let's spend $100,000. Let's make it a kick-ass event. Let's make $100,000. Let's blow this thing out. If it's that good of an event. If it's that good, spend $100,000. If it's worth spending taxpayers' money, then spend $50,000 and do it right. Do it big time. Or don't do it at all. So, I don't know. Looks like you guys are going to go pass it, move on, we'll put it on the thing, and we'll go on down the road. But it is $25,000 of taxpayers' money. It doesn't have strategic alignment from my perspective of where we are today in our planning, which we do need, Jeff. And that definitely needs to be part. And we need to understand what our events look like for the year and what the outcomes are going to look like. And what the cost is, what we're going to spend. We need to know that in advance. Like you said, 12 months in advance. And I appreciate the fact that this is 11 months in advance.
Yes, Councilmember Hills?
What are the repercussions if we don't push this through right now with your grant? You can't go forward with the grant. And do we have $25,000 allocated now in the budget? So this is all or none here.
Yes, Councilmember Hall?
I'd just like a clarification. We haven't gone through the budget process yet where, and perhaps Director Luckett could comment that there may be money in the budget that is available for this event, or would that be part of the new budget that we'd be passing in July?
Good evening, everyone. So yes, this would be part of, since this is in next September, October, this would be part of the FY23 budget process.
So there would be opportunity to budget $25,000 or whatever amount of money when we have a comprehensive overview of a strategic direction of events.
The one thing I will say, I don't know their timetable in terms of planning and things like that, but in terms of just purely budget timeline, it would be FY23.
Thank you for, of course, the planning.
Mayor Wilson?
Dr. Vanstrom, what is Betty going to say when you said, I spent $25,000 on an event like this in December?
She's going to say, I'm glad that you only spent 20 and didn't spend 25.
Yeah.
I mean, the question is a serious question for us as the elected representatives. What do our constituents believe about? And I think, it's great.
And just really, my thought on this is, and what I appreciate is the pursuit of the grant and finding an avenue to fund part of this. And I think that's really important that we realize that, and we realize that's on the table. One thing that's frustrating with turnover is we're sitting here talking about what we want in the long term for the city, and you've got a January, end of January deadline for you to possibly come up with some extra money, and I appreciate that frustration. I think the event is a good event for Roswell. I truly do. I agree with all the comments so far, people that attended it, people that have enjoyed it, and I think it is a great cultural event for the city. I'd like to see you able to pursue the grant. I just would like to see you pursue it for a little bit less.
One last comment.
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
How many people were at the event in 2020? 2020.
2019.
2019.
I'm terrible at estimating crowds.
Fair enough, that's okay.
I'm really.
Let me lead you on a question. Let me be.
Yeah, it's we're probably, I think conservatively, probably in that 3,000 to maybe 3,500 on the conservative side. It's such a transient open gate event. That's what makes it difficult to really pin yourself down. But imagine the back of City Hall, shoulder to shoulder, from the lighted walkway all the way to this side of the parking lot for a few hours.
It was a 6-hour event, so it is, to Mr. Logan's point, very transient. It starts out with a lot of kids, and as it gets later, it's adults. And then we had Coco this past year. That brought some families back to watch the movie. Hard to estimate.
Further comments or questions? Yes, Councilmember Morthland.
Real quick, did you get any feedback? I know this year was tough, but on the first year, did you get any feedback that businesses on Canton Street and surrounding businesses had picked up attendance based off of this event that we're having?
Not per se. No one actually called me and said, "Thanks, Chris, we picked up business." But I talked to them quite frequently because of Alive in Roswell, and they were pleased with it because the first one in 19 we did a parade, so people stayed and did the parade on Canton Street, and people stayed over there and had dinner and drinks. This past year we did Coco, and it was raining, so I don't know how many people. I think people left the event and went over and got more in the bar and ate dinner. So, but I didn't get an estimate from it. I didn't hear negatives from it, and I know I would if they weren't happy with me. So that's a positive.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. And actually, I think going back to our goals, and things like that, so I see myself voting the way however the majority of this committee is going to vote, but I think it is important we're having our big picture goals, and of course, supporting our businesses is one of them. And I will point out, I remember from a, discussion from some business owners on Canton Street. This is before this event even existed. They had actually said, some of them said that there was a Roswell Moves event that we hosted that ended up being, many of them said it was the best business day they ever had, better than Alive in Roswell, better than just holiday, whatever. And the investment, I believe, that we put into Roswell Moves was $8,000. And it just had the, kids on bicycles going up and down Canton Street on a sunny day, but then everybody just, covering every single restaurant and bar that entire day. But so I think that is something valuable we think about and we discuss. And then also clearly, I think it is important, no matter how this committee votes today, that first of all, I'm hoping that if this committee does vote to request the grant, that the grant people listen to this conversation and see that that they're not guaranteed to have the event. So if they like it, hopefully they're going to want to help pay towards it, as well as staff taking Councilmember Hall's advice as well, and just realizing that that certainly we have to set some direction, and that if we're not getting the grant, obviously that's a whole nother discussion we're getting, because then we're not getting an extra dollar for every dollar we invest.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? All right, at this point, we will entertain further direction from the council. Does anyone have a motion? Councilmember Morthland, a motion to pursue the grant at its fullest at $50,000 total, or I'm sorry, $25,000 with a $25,000 match. Is that correct? That's a motion from Councilmember Morthland. Is there a second? Councilmember Hall with a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? All right, motion fails. Is there another motion?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the proposal at a $20,000 match.
All right. Motion by Councilmember Vanstrom to move forward at $20,000. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Morthland. Second by Councilmember Morthland. Any further comment? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? All right, the motion does pass at $20,000. Okay? All right, thank you. All right, next item is consideration to award a contract with Prime Contractors Incorporated for renovations of the Cultural Arts Center, second floor, in preparation of the Roswell Historical Society's expansion in the amount of $148,459. Mr. Leather.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. What you have before you is a bid contract. The second floor of the Cultural Arts Center, when it was originally constructed, was intended to house the Historical Society. It includes some archival space, some research space, office space, as well as some open floor space. And its original intent was to be able to display items from our historical archives out for the public to view. As part of the historical operation, we also shared the space with George Ensemble Theater on the second floor for their operations and office. I think we're probably coming close to about 6 to 7 months ago. Now, they vacated the space as they were outgrowing it and really just couldn't continue their operations in that constrained environment with having both organizations there. And so, as part of our current year budget authorization, the council authorized $150,000 for improvements to the space that would allow us to do carpet, walls, paint, ceiling tiles, and lighting. Items that we weren't able to get through with a highly compacted environment, meaning we just had a lot of people working and couldn't clear out the office spaces, so that then we could transition into expanding the Historical Society's footprint and being able to have some display space up on the second floor, as well as a processing space for the archives as things come into the Historical Society. We bid this contract. We had two responsive bidders. Prime Contract is recommended to be awarded the bid just under the $150,000 budget, and we're recommending moving this forward for award at your next council meeting. Be happy to answer any questions.
Yes. Questions, comments from members of the council? Seeing none, I would then entertain a motion to move this item forward.
A motion to move this item forward.
All right. A motion by Councilmember Hills. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Vanstrom. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Excuse me. Next item, community development item, consideration of a final plat, 202000649 or 849. 849. Put my glasses on. For saddle crossing for 6 lots at 400 Ebenezer Road. Yes. All right. Ms. Lenore?
I'm Lenore Bromberg, Deputy Director of Community Development, and what I thought I would do this evening is give you just a quick summary of the process for plats, so you understand how they end up in front of you. In the packet, I've provided with some sections that are copied out of the code, which I'll refer to. This is on page 243 of the packet. There are a number of ways that plats go through the process as far as how they end up getting platted in the first place. There are a couple different scales. There's small ones, there's large ones. The larger ones go through a two-step process, and those are the ones that ultimately come to council because you're going to be approving the public infrastructure, new roads, new right-of-way, easements, that sort of thing. And then those get recorded upon your approval, and then they move forward with the building permits. So this particular project, I'll have Jackie go through in just a moment the specifics on it, but it has gone through that process. So it comes into the staff as a preliminary plat that is heard, reviewed by staff, and then is heard, reviewed by planning commission. After it goes through that process, it goes to the land disturbance permitting process, and once they reach a substantial completion of the infrastructure, roadways are in, utilities are in, the sites are prepped. There might still be a couple of outstanding things like sidewalk construction, installation of lights and so forth. Then it comes forward for our consideration for a final plat. And when Jackie and I find through our staff that it has met all other requirements of the code, including the elements that are required to be completed per the approved documents all the way up until that moment, then we put it onto your agenda for approval. Typically, they go onto consent. If there isn't and it's controversial, is very complicated, there's questions about it, then sometimes they are pulled off and brought onto the regular agenda. And that's just typically how they've kind of gone through the process. It's a pretty mundane, ordinary process that all jurisdictions go through. They can be large and complicated, messy sometimes. So if there's any questions about the process, I can certainly answer that, and then Jackie can give you the specifics on this particular plat, which is one of our smaller ones I think we've ever done.
So this plat, hi, I'm Jackie Dybel, Planning and Zoning Director, for those of you who I haven't met. So this plat is located, it's called Saddle Crossing. It's located at Ebenezer Road. It's for 6 single-family lots, and it's zoned RS30. So sometimes you have some properties that are currently zoned as is, and somebody can do a plat under the current zoning. Sometimes you'll get a rezoning for a single-family development that we had a couple months ago with the Grand Reserve. And then they'll, after they get rezoned, then they'll do a preliminary plat and a final plat. This one, which here, for some reason, this isn't working here. This is the property. It's up off of Ebenezer Road. It was zoned RS30 already, so they brought it forward, and they're coming to you for 6 single-family lots. As you can see here, they have detention, and then they have the 6 single-family lots, all zoned 30,000 square feet or more. And I believe, if I'm right, these might be around an acre. But that's basically the final plat process. So as Lenore just stated, it'll come through either as zoned, under whatever zoning classification it is, RS30, RS18, however, they'll submit their drawings to staff, and they'll be reviewed by all departments, ComDev, Fire, Transportation. Everybody will give comments on it. Once it's ready to go as a preliminary plat, it will go to Planning Commission, and once the Planning Commission approves the plat, then it will go to the land disturbance permit process, start that process. This plat, interesting enough, started in 2016 for 6 single-family lots. Sometimes they take a long time, and sometimes they can go a little faster. Normally, you wouldn't think something this small would take 6 years, but it has. They've been a little bit slow on their end, bringing stuff back and forth to us and getting this built out. But they are ready to go, and we're hoping that we'll be able to place this on your January 24th agenda so that they can move forward. Because once it's approved, it'll get recorded with Fulton County, and then they'll be able to start building, submit for the actual building permits for the single-family homes.
So just to give you the timeline on this, it did go to to Planning Commission for preliminary plat approval in June of 2016. They got their land disturbance permit in November of 2016. It is very unusual for us to have an aerial photo for you that shows the road already built. We do get photos every year, but it's unusual for us to actually have a road that's been out there long enough that we can actually show it to in the aerials. And then about a month ago is when staff deemed that they had completed all the necessary things on site in order for them to be able to come forward with a preliminary plat. This also does get reviewed by Fulton County. If there is Fulton County water or sewer, they do as-built and sign off on the plat. In this particular case, it's actually septic systems that will be built with each single-family lot. So the Fulton County Department of Public Health Environmental Services group are the ones who sign off, and their signature is actually on the plat. I think it's on the first page, which we don't have on the screen. So there's a number of signatures that go on there, including from those other jurisdictions and all like that. And we recommend approval of the plat and putting this on an agenda, but we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, I believe I saw Councilmember Palermo first and Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. So just some comments. When there's a rezoning request during the rezoning process, there's obviously many different factors that mayor and council will take into account on whether they're going to decide to either grant the rezoning request, deny the rezoning request, or grant it with some changes. Whereas from a final plat, so I certainly agree with everything staff had just mentioned, and I'm just going to give it in kind of my more layman's terms. It's my understanding that, so even if you're thinking, obviously, in my opinion, RS 30 very much fits right here, and I see all those lots are following all the rules of RS 30, but basically, when mayor and council is approving, what are things that mayor and council would have the authority to push back on? My understanding is it could be aspects around, it's missing the sidewalks, so it's not following sidewalk policies, which in reality, staff would have already, I expect, would have already verified, as well as same with all the zoning rules of the lots. Another one is, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that stormwater would have to be a shared responsibility of the entire HOA. It would not just be the responsibility of a single house, but those are the types of things, and it's not based on the same types of factors or discussions that you might have in a rezoning request.
Sure. So there actually are some standards that council has the opportunity to waive or modify. They're included in section 13.5.18. I included it in the handout. Honestly, we've never really used any of them, so I'm not sure what kind of specific examples would come forward, but it does provide some opportunities that, so as we mentioned, it goes to Planning Commission for preliminary plat. Council doesn't see those unless we have a situation where it's appealed, which we have had that we've gone through. And then once it gets to final plat is where council has the opportunity to look at it. But it does talk about opportunities for this body to waive at their council meeting some of those standards. And a lot of it, I believe, would do that if they are faced with some problem that they determine during construction and they're not able to build what you approved at rezoning and in preliminary plat, and there's some modification to that, then they could come to you to say, we want to have that standard waived. It doesn't give any specific examples on what that is, but let's say, for example, they ran into some rock and they couldn't do an infiltration system and they need to do something else or they can't do it all, then this body would have the ability to waive some of those standards. But we typically would go through the entire list of things that are required to be met per the code, and if they don't meet those, we don't allow it to move forward. If they were to come to us with an application, then that part of that to say, we can't meet this and here's why, then we would make that a part of the submittal to you to consider at that approval process. So hopefully that helps.
Yes, Councilmember Hall, yes.
Can you speak to just two things, just educate us on the LDPs? So what is the duration or how long do those last, and would they have to update the plat if they're doing that? And also, as far as clearing the lots, when they, we hear from a lot of residents that are concerned that developers, builders will want to come in and do a project, and they'll go in and clear all the trees and then do nothing for 5 or 6 years. So can you speak to that, and do we address that in the code now, or what are potential opportunities to improve that?
Sure. Can you remind me what your first part of your question was? I'm sorry.
The first part was the LDP and how long they last. And then,
right. So typically, the code calls for that the land disturbance permit for the general project needs to be completed within 2 years of that submission. They actually did. It's been sitting. We don't know why. They've just been on hold, and the permit has been sitting there. The roads have been built. The thing that they had not completed, ironically, was a fence around the pond and some landscaping that we required around the pond. We've been waiting for them to do that, and it took us, I think we've been reviewing this application for the plat for 6 or 7 months. I'm not sure why they take so long. It's just this particular group that just seems to be taking a very long time. And so we've continued to inspect it and to go out there and look at it. In this particular case, we didn't have any violation, to be frank with you. We did not go pursue, why haven't you finished doing this work? They were going out there doing some stuff periodically. they ran into some issue at some point during construction. Honestly, I just don't remember what it is, but typically we would say, your duration is up, we need to understand either why we need to give you an extension, or you need to wrap it up and get the plat into us. And honestly, this plat application might have been more than that, because they submitted, we had comments.
It's been going on for
And
about
then
a
it
year.
took months for them to resubmit something to us.
Yes.
So when that next kind of phase of the element of the project is ongoing, it kind of puts a hold on everything else that we're doing. And so that's kind of why this one, I think, has lasted a little bit longer than it normally would. This is not typical. We don't normally have developments that take this long to get to the plat phase, and then take this long to go through the plat process in of itself. I've already forgotten what your second
Clearing
was.
of
Oh, the clearing,
land.
yes, so that happens in land disturbance permit. So it actually, when we start at the preliminary plat phase, we actually require them to show us at that time what their intended tree save area is going to be. That is going to be identified on the preliminary plat, and then that carries through to land disturbance permit and ultimately onto the final plat. In this particular case, this was actually largely pasture.
Yeah.
It was not a lot of trees on it to begin with. So it doesn't necessarily fall under some of those same concerns we absolutely have seen in the past. When a project that's of large scale comes through the land disturbance permit process, we look to see what the total area of disturbance is going to be. There are some state thresholds where you can't go over a certain amount of disturbance at one given time that we make sure they adhere to. And then there's making sure they comply with the tree protection ordinance, the erosion control portion of our ordinance, and the other elements that are relative to that too. How much clearing is necessary to build the infrastructure in of itself. And there are some developers who will choose to clear as little as possible to build that infrastructure. The Grand Reserve at Litchfield is a great example of that, where they did not come in and clear cut all the way out to where the actual building footprint would be. They did enough to be able to build the roads, the stormwater ponds, and the infrastructure that supports that. And then the individual lots that are coming in and selectively clearing them out they need to do for those houses. So the terrain, the developer's preference, in many cases it's the topography, to be honest with you. It's if it's already cleared, if it's relatively flat, can dictate how little or how much clearing there needs to be. When there's a lot of topography, in order to get the road in, there might be a whole lot more grading that has to be done, which of course influences that limits of disturbance. So that's all reviewed at the land disturbance permit phase. Like I said, there are some limitations. It is not possible for us to say you can only clear a certain amount as long as they comply with the ordinance from a tree protection perspective and complying with meeting the tree density units that are required for the site, that they recompense for any specimen removal that may be done. Then there's not a whole lot of opportunity for us to say we don't want you to clear any more than that, as long as they're complying with the regulations that apply to it. We certainly hope that they use best practices and don't clear any more than they need to, but it's case by case on the site.
All right, yes, Mayor Wilson?
City Administrator, I thought you told me this was going to be easy, slam dunk stuff.
I thought it would be too.
I did too. I will tell you, I've looked at this plat, and this looks like slam dunk. Looked at the impervious area, look at the size of the acreage lots, look at the street layout, bada boom, easy peasy. I thought this would be a sign off, move on. But all of a sudden I hear 2016. So I hear 5 years. That concerns me. That doesn't strike me. I'd like to know a little more. I don't mean, I'm not conspiratorial, but I usually know that when somebody has not moved on a project in this economic environment, on single-family homes in this marketplace, that are acre lots, I'd like to know why. Why is it a developer or a single-family builder? This one's easy. This is as easy as they come. This one is a slam dunk. Why in the world is it 5+ years?
It was the individual who's doing the work. We've got another one that's very similar to this. They came in, they built the road, they platted it, and then it sat for 2 years before they started building houses.
So, I would
And that
say,
was a personal preference on the builder, not necessarily.
and I would say as a city, we should have some kind of, I hate the word policy. Timeline. But we should have a timeline for execution. We need to have instruments of execution and timelines. Personal property rights, you're welcome to do what you want to with your land, right? We all believe in personal property rights. But once you start getting into the development piece, you change the game. And you change the game that you have to fit the purview of the governance that you're working with. And so, I bet you guys probably agree with this, I don't know if you do or not. 5 years is crazy. I mean, there ought to be a logical explanation. I will tell you, it sends up my little spider antennae when somebody hasn't moved on something in 5 years. Like, I feel like, uh-oh, we're gonna sign off on this, and this is the one that's gonna be a gotcha in 18 months. It's gonna come back on council like, oh, you guys signed off on that deal? And there was some issue with this one. It has my little, I don't mean to sound conspiratorial, but 5 years makes no sense to me. I'd love to know what's the gig. What is the reason why it took 5 years?
I'll be honest with you, we will not be able to get an answer. It's the person, it's just this developer, and that's just how long they took to do it. Now, I will say that there have been times when I know of one other development that also took a very long time to get to the final plat stage. And it was a developer who was probably trying to do this for the very first time.
That's different.
That doesn't know what they're doing, financial issues, so forth and so on. At the end of the day, though, they have to pass the inspections. So it has to be built to our standard, it has to pass all the required inspections. Have to get the pavement borings to show that the road actually meets the proper depth. So they have to still meet all the requirements, even if they just happen to be very slow at getting it done. And I completely agree with you. It's 6 lots. Why in the world would it take that long? And it's the group that particularly did this. They were that slow in getting like their preliminary plat submitted to us. This is not. I'm not surprised, to be frank with you, that it took them this long, just based on their there wasn't a sense of urgency. Like many other developers are like, oh no, we want to get to selling our houses, so how fast can we go? Can we cut corners and?
So if somebody doesn't have financial wherewithal, we don't have any way of knowing that.
No, sir.
If somebody doesn't deliver at the end of the day, we don't have any instrument to really do anything about that, right? If we approve them let's say we approve them for this development, right? And they do one house, and the rest of the development sits there. We don't have anything at our disposal, do we?
The only thing that we have is the ability to protect the maintenance and performance of the public infrastructure. So they have to maintain it, they have to perform what they're required to do, and we do require bonds for those things when we have a plat process that we go through like this.
Has this developer done any other work in the city of Roswell?
I didn't say wants to be the other one that took so long.
I didn't recognize
It's the same engineer.
It's the same engineer. The engineer's been he's been around forever.
And he's very slow. I mean, just in turnaround and stuff. So I don't believe they have. I don't recall them doing any other work.
Obviously, you guys are recommending it, so I'm going to assume, but I'll ask, you have no concerns about the developer or the execution of this project?
No concerns about the public infrastructure that's been installed.
Everything is there, everything is complete, and it's been inspected by the city staff.
Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Is there anything with Primitive Union we need to know about on Baptist Church or the Chapmans on the adjacent properties? Was there any struggle there or fluffle?
Zero complaints about
Nobody's
this
called
one.
in at all about
Just
this.
that they didn't put my landscaping on the ask. That's my only complaint.
And that's all in now.
Yeah, we had no erosion control concerns during construction. At first, getting them going was getting that straight, but no complaint to the neighbors, downstream, upstream, across the street. We haven't heard a peep.
Yes.
Is that a motion to move this to council?
Motion from Councilmember Palermo to move forward. Second.
I had further discussion questions.
All right, since the motion's on the table, motion by Councilmember Palermo, is there a second? At this point.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Hall, and of course, further comment, question by Councilmember Bannister.
Just more of an observation. There's 3 things that are coming out of this discussion that I know this council and mayor are so concerned about. And I really would like to have city administrator and legal start a process of how we can evaluate this together. We constantly come on planning commission, I saw the same thing. We constantly come up with questions about why is this project taking so long? What can the city do to number one, assure that the finances are in order before we approve projects. Yeah, I know legal's going to let out a big sigh. I'm just asking the questions because that seems to be the biggest hurdle we run into quite often. It's just not, they don't have what they say they have, and it gets stalled out. Secondly, tree clearings that go on. Councilman Hall brought up tree clearings. I think the more specific question is the timing of the tree clearings and also the expansiveness of the tree clearings. So that's something I'd like us to look into a lot more in controlling the development that goes on in the city. And timelines in general, the time from the start to the completion. We seem to not be asking developers in Roswell very much at all for the residents who have to live around these types of developments. And I know you're the public, you've got certain parameters that they have to follow and keep landscape up to a minimum of amount, but I know there are plenty of places right now that people are tired of looking at. So I'd like to see if we can review those and start to really break those apart and see if we can't make some progress on that.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Vanstrom. Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Just the two things that I'd like to add to your to-do list, just as far as bonding, if we can look at bonding that's related to time and performance in that respect, and also the tree ordinance. Ms. Bromberg mentioned that they comply with the ordinance as far as clear cutting, but we certainly can change our ordinance and make our ordinance something that is more feasible or palatable to the residents. And then the clear cutting would be according to whatever our updated ordinance would be. Is that correct? If we would have an opportunity to change the ordinance?
So yes and no, there are clearly opportunities where we can change the ordinance. I think what we've struggled with in the past is when jurisdictions try to tighten down the tree removal ordinance in particular too much, that the state level property right starts to weigh in and we start to lose very quickly. We have a pretty strict ordinance. We've gone through an evaluation and looking at it over the past few years. The last time we did a major overhaul on it, and comparing ourselves to our neighbors and other counties and cities around us. There are, possibly some opportunities for phasing or limiting things. The struggle is that in order to build the infrastructure and the roadway grades that are required to be done in many cases, especially on some of our more challenging sites that are left because there's a reason they haven't been built on. They're topographically challenged. They've got rather, I won't say steep slopes, but steeper than flat. And when you start to get into that, in order to be able to meet the grades you have to, it expands that limit of construction that you have to do, which of course impacts your tree clearing. And so it becomes a very difficult balance of what we want to limit in order to control that versus, obviously letting clear cut. Now, if there are mechanisms for us to possibly look at from a staging perspective, the very first phase of going in to build something when it's a larger scale project, that initial phase, are there ways for us to limit the clearing? And one of the things that we have done is that you can't just go clear cut the entire thing that is your ultimate construction project, but you have to only clear and remove the amount that's required for your initial phase of construction. So for example, if there's a 25-acre lot or parcel that's going to be divided into 10 houses, and they're going to come in and build a series of road, we do have the ability to say during that initial phase, we only want to see that you're clearing the amount that's necessary only to get in your silt fence, your sediment ponds, and so forth. You can't just go and clear everything that you're ultimately going to disturb over time. So we do have that, and that's a best practice as a part of the erosion control design that we do have some control over, that's not necessarily codified because it's based on the site. If there are limitations that would want to be made to the actual amount of clearing, I'm not sure how you do that definitively, and we would have to look at, from a legal perspective, are there any other things out there that prevent us from dictating that? And I just don't know how we would go about doing that since every single site is different, and not, what's the best way to do that to be able to have some management of that. And we certainly can look at and see what those options are. I honestly don't know how easy it will be to come up with something that's very specific.
I think one of the cities in North Carolina, I don't want to say Charlotte, but I'll just offline, I'll email you some information. I believe they did that. And I think 2 years ago, we tightened up the tree ordinance.
We made some changes to the specimen definitions, yes. That's the only change that we've made recently, because ours is already pretty tight.
Well, anyway, I think it would be worth it to pursue that.
So with our motion in a second, I do want to remind everybody, in addition to having 3 other items on here, we actually have an important EPW one that we need to address today, and I think the goal is probably to be in chambers by 6:59. So I just want to make sure that we're conscious of time.
Yes, the attorney and I are working out a plan here. We do have a motion on the table and a second. We did have discussion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for all those in favor. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
And then as Mr. Skelsey starts walking up, I will start giving a preview just in the order of time. We did cover this at a committee meeting a few months ago, which we voted to move it forward. Basically, this is an item that staff had requested a few years ago in the annual budget. We finally had started to fund it in the last year or two, and just basically it's to help with the fact that staff requested it, I believe, even prior to the middle school being built, and then obviously with the middle school being built, creates an even bigger traffic issue on Woodstock Road. But Mr. Skelsey, now that you're here sitting down.
So I hope this is a fairly straightforward item. This is the permission to proceed with a blanket right-of-way agreement for 2 parcels to facilitate this intersection improvement at State Route 92 and Woodstock Road. I'm happy to answer any questions.
And to get started, I certainly want to make sure Mayor and Council ask all of their questions, but I am going to start out with a motion, which is going to be motion to approve with the reminder to staff that, first of all, I know in a previous council meeting committee meeting a few months ago, there was discussion potentially that the plans for which side of the road where the multi-use trail would go could be changing. And just based on, a number of different factors around costs, other reasons, because I believe that's what was discussed regarding King Road. So I'd ask that you just take that into consideration for opportunities to save money. And then also the fact that if anytime there's opportunities for reducing lane widths, in so many places of the city, have that be a consideration, which should hopefully reduce the number below 70,000. But my motion will be to move forward with staff looking at those 2 things. Not sure if this committee will support or not, but.
That's item number 8, and Council Member Palermo has made a motion to move forward with that item, which is the consideration of a blanket agreement to perform right-of-way acquisition services, except right-of-way options for the State Route 92 at Woodstock Road intersection improvement project in an amount not to exceed $70,000.
Second.
And the motion has been seconded by Council Member Hall. Further discussion on this item? Council Member Hills.
This is a continuation from the King Road, correct?
Yeah, it's just on the south side of Croswell versus north, but it is related, yeah.
Any further question or comment? Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Is this, what Michael just threw out there, those extra 2 pieces, they have nothing to do. You're just throwing those out there as commentary?
Well, it's commentary, but it's relevant because if staff sees the opportunity that actually we need less right-of-way than previously felt, it's the opportunity to save money and hopefully make it a little quicker. But it's nothing definite, nothing that they're held to.
May I just?
Yes.
In this particular instance, the right-of-way and the easements that have been approved here do accommodate a little bit extra to facilitate the multi-use trail on the east side of Woodstock, and should the decision be made to do that on the other side, it has to be purchased for completing the right turn lane no matter what, but we may be able to tweak it down at a later stage based on changes that this council may direct. But right now, we need that right of way, and we could always trade it, dispose of it, sell it back if it's not necessary.
So your comments are trashing the lawn? Your comments are kind of trashing the lawn? In other words, you say, I got it, we got it figured out, we're cool. We got the modality opportunity if we need it. If we don't need it, we're good.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure, I'll make sure.
Yeah, go with all that, yep.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second. We had discussion. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, I believe we can handle this next item. Item number 9, consideration to change the date and time of the Community Development and Transportation Committee meeting, which is currently on the Wednesday, the fourth Wednesday of the month at 8:00 a.m. That's the current Wednesday after the fourth Monday, I'm sorry. Wednesday after the fourth Monday. Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
This time I certainly do not have a motion because this certainly requires some discussion and consensus. But I just want to state that I do believe we should focus the times of our meetings based on really when's best for residents and to quote the mayor, really the people's calendar. And with that, I certainly have a suggestion to consider, but obviously very appreciative of what this council thinks is best. But I think one thing to consider is certainly evening instead of morning, because I do feel most residents in a non-COVID time are driving to the office at 8 or 8:30, and so I think that's a reason to move it to the evening. I think also even really, ideally I think 5:30 makes a lot of sense given given the opportunity that if residents see an item to be able to come at 5:30 for it, have a chance to have gotten out of work, and then lastly, something to consider is perhaps for consistency, instead of it being Wednesday, it being on Tuesday, so just that the public knows that committees are Tuesdays. There's two a month, and then there's 2 council meetings. But again, obviously not making a motion. Really curious what everybody feels is best. I just wanted to state kind of some thoughts I have.
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
I echo Michael, excellent thoughts. Tuesdays make sense, 5:30 makes sense. Let's move on.
All right. So the motion is to have the Community Development and Transportation Committee meeting moved to
Tuesday after the fourth Monday at 5:30 p.m.
at 5:30 p.m.
Fourth Tuesday, right?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily?
The day after the fourth Monday.
After the fourth Monday.
Because if the first.
Councilmember Vanstrom, yes.
I just have one question. Has there been a struggle or any indication from the public that 5 o'clock is a problem for the current committee meeting that we have after the second Tuesday?
I feel I've heard and witnessed some situations where someone wanted to be there, whether it was back when they were allowed to speak or they weren't, but it was an important item, and then they end up getting here after. Truth be told, some of them might even just get at 6, in which case it's too late and would still be too late under this scenario, but I feel by having it at 5:30, we're decreasing the chances, but I feel that is something that I've witnessed at the meetings.
Mayor Wilson.
Let's change it to 5 o'clock, just like this one. He's right. 5 o'clock. 5:30, it doesn't matter. They're going to make it at 5.
You want to be here, you're going to be here for your agenda item at 5 o'clock versus 5.
Exactly. You're right, Peter.
All right, any further discussion? I believe there was a motion.
I'm going to amend my motion to 5 o'clock on the Tuesday after the fourth Monday.
Okay, there's a motion by Councilmember Palermo. Is there a second? Second, Councilmember Hills.
Well, actually, Councilman Morrison, you haven't weighed in, is that?
Second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you very much. That does pass. All right. Okay, we've got one item that was added out of necessity. Item number 10, you'll see on the agenda that has been provided to you. Consideration to submit a Transportation Federal Lands Access Program grant application to study the feasibility of a trail connection from Oxbow Road parking lot to the Vickery Creek Connection Trail.
And I motion to approve since this is just a grant application, so there's no commitment, but I think we should pursue the potential grant.
All right, is that a motion? And for purposes of the discussion, the grant is in a total of $150,000. There is no match, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. That's a second by Councilmember Hall. Question by Mayor Wilson.
Councilman Hills, do you want to add anything to this related to our commentary discussion today? We're good to go.
Look at it.
All right. Any further discussion? You have a motion, a second. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? All right, thank you very much. All right, that concludes the administration, Administration, Finance, Recreation, and Parks Committee meeting. We have a motion to adjourn this committee meeting. Motion by Mayor Wilson, second by Councilmember Palermo. All those in favor? All right, we have adjourned this committee meeting. Thank you. Convene. We will begin the Public Safety and Public Works Committee in just a moment here. In just about 30 seconds, we will convene the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting.
Is this going to be hard?
All right, as everyone convenes for the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting. Good afternoon and welcome to the Public Safety and Public Works Committee for January 11th, 2022. Certainly want to acknowledge the elected officials here. Mayor Kurt Wilson, Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember Mike Palermo, Councilmember Peter Vanstrom, Councilmember Lee Hills, and Councilmember William Morthland. The purpose of committee meetings are for the city departments to convey information to the mayor and city council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, members of the city council, and the city administrator. The ordinance does mandate the city administrator as the chair of committee meetings. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, we do not take public comments or questions during committee meetings. Public comments or questions are received at the regular city council meetings held at 7:00 p.m. in the city council chambers on the second and fourth Monday of each month and the fifth Monday of each month in open forum. We do encourage citizens to engage our online platforms, and if you have questions or need information regarding any matter, our staff is available to provide that information to you. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Public Safety and Public Works Committee for December 14th, 2021. I will entertain a motion of approval of those minutes.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Hall, second by Councilmember Palermo. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you, unanimously. All right. The next item on the agenda is under Public Safety Fire. A consideration to submit a 2022 Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation grant for a fire safety education fire extinguisher simulator. Gentlemen, Chief Benino.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As City Administrator Knighton said, this is for a Firehouse Public Safety grant for a fire extinguisher simulator that we use as part of our public education program. I'm going to turn it over to Fire Marshal Baca, who's going to give a little bit more information.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Charlie Baca, the Fire Marshal for the city.
One of the missions in the fire marshal's office is public safety education. And one of the tools that we use is our fire extinguisher simulator. Our current system is approximately 10 years old. It takes 2 people an extended amount of time to set up, clean, and then tear back down every time we go to use it.
Yeah, I'm sold. Motion to approve.
All right, we do have a motion and a second. Motion from Councilmember Palermo, second from Councilmember Hills. Question from Mayor Wilson.
Do you have a desire to speak more to the issue, Marshall?
No, sir.
All right, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Do you let citizens or say council, oh my gosh, council members try it out?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We do have a motion, a second. Any further discussion regarding this Public Safety Foundation grant request, which does not require a local match, in the amount of $27,680? Any further questions? All right, motion second. All those in favor? All right, thank you very much. That does move forward. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, we do not have any action items, public safety action items from the police department. We do have public works items, item number 3 on the agenda. Consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to approve updates to the water utility master plan. Ms. Izo?
Good evening, and thank you for working this around so that we could get these 2 items in. Being at the end of Public Works, Public Safety, we tend to talk really fast and very abbreviated on some nights, so I'm glad we're going to get to breathe our way through this. I want to start by saying that this is an update to our master plan from 2016. In 2016, I just want to give you a little bit of background. We had just bought our water plant online, our brand new water plant, and we had just taken a very large loan, and we were feeling a little cash poor. So at the time, we were anxious to get back to putting water lines in the ground, and this group took a look at each other and said, hey, we can do the update to the master plan, and so we did. So this master plan actually has worked very well for us, and we're going to give you an update on the recommendations from that plan, and then we're also going to give you the update for 21-22. And this provides our 5-year roadmap for what we need to accomplish, what the outlook is for the regulatory point of view, and what the state of the fund is at this point. So I want to recognize a few people. On our technical team, we had Jesse Cash, who's our plant manager, Andy Hamby, our assistant plant manager, and Hill Boffman, who provided technical insights on the master plan update. From finance, we get loads of support, primarily from Lynn Williams, Lacey Smith-Castillo, and Rahel Turner. And then from our support services team, we have Brian Watson, who runs that group for us, and Nancy Velez, and of course Patty Weathersby, who many of you have probably spoken to if you've ever called the Roswell Water Utility. So here with me tonight are Chris Boyd and Erica Coe. Chris, of course, is our utility manager and does an absolutely fantastic job for us and kind of keeps us all put together. But on this one in particular, Erica Coe acted as our project manager, and so she's going to kick off this presentation for you and then hand off to Chris.
Mayor, Council, so as Sharon's mentioned, this is the update to the 2016 master plan. It was completely completed internally, managed internally, tracked internally, and the purpose of this document is to summarize what the water utility has done in the past 5 years, as well as where we would like to go in the next 5 years. So first we're going to start off with just a very high-level overview of the Roswell water utility, which includes both the water treatment plant as well as the distribution system. Then I'm going to pass it over to Chris. He's going to give you an update on some of the projects that were completed as part of the 2016 master plan recommendations, just to give you an idea of where we've been and what has been implemented. He's going to go over the goals of this master plan and how it ties into the city's current strategic plan, and then highlight some projects that are part of the recommendations and proposed for the next 5 years. So this is an overview of the water utility. Roswell gets its water from 3 sources. The main source is Big Creek. We have an intake in Big Creek where the water is pumped either to a raw water storage tank or it bypasses the tank and is pumped directly to the water treatment plant where it is treated before being pumped into the distribution system. We also use groundwater, so we have one wellhead and a treatment facility off of Willio Road. So the water is pumped from the groundwater wellhead to the treatment facility and then also directly into the distribution system. And then we also maintain 6 interconnections with Fulton County's water system. And this allows us to purchase water from Fulton County when our water treatment plant is down or we are not able to meet demand. Within the distribution system, we have 3 above-ground storage tanks. One on High Tower Road, which is 500,000 gallons, one on Woodstock Road, which is another 500,000 gallons, and then one on Community Circle, which is 75,000 gallons. With that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
So out of the 2016 master plan, we had 19 recommendations or goals that we wanted to complete. And we were able to complete 14 out of these 19 goals, while 3 recommendations are currently in progress. So I'd actually up that number to 17 will be completed soon. And we have 1 recommendation that wasn't actually scheduled until FY27. So for the water treatment plant, we completed all the recommendations that we had set in place in 2016. And I wanted to highlight the optimized water production. We were able to obtain real-time pricing with Georgia Power, which helped us cut our power costs down by 45%. We also did a chemical optimization study and found that we could eliminate feeding sodium permanganate as part of our pre-treatment, and sodium permanganate is one of our most expensive chemicals. So we've been able to cut both power and chemical costs today. For water distribution, we completed 4 recommendations, while 3 are still currently in progress. We have completed 33 water line replacement projects. Of those, 43% were galvanized steel. We've replaced 43% of our galvanized steel water mains. We also acquired our asset management software, Hyperweb, that we use for both asset management, work orders, project management, inventory control, and job costing. For the water operations admin, we've completed all of our recommendations here. Key things I wanted to point out is we acquired Hyperweb 301, which is actually the City of Roswell app, which is available for our customers and residents to download to report issues that they have, but also keep up to date with city events, city directory, meetings, etc. This replaced C-Click Fix, and it provides us with the opportunity that it ties to our asset management software. And so customers are actually able to track their requests from the time they initiate it to the time the work order is closed and get response back from staff real time. We also renewed our water permits for the plant. And as part of this, we were able to remove the 50% safety factor that was on the old permit, thus allowing us to withdraw water at our maximum yield at a lower flow rate. And then in 2018, we certified our lab to do bacteria tests. So we're able to do those tests in-house instead of send off to the lab. So for the goals of the 22 master plan, we wanted to make sure that they tied directly to the city's new strategic plan. And this does by meeting outstanding city services. You know, we want to make sure we're providing great customer services and providing good quality water to our customers. But we want to maintain the public health and safety through the safe and reliable delivery of potable water. So the goals of the 2022 Water Utility Master Plan are these. We want to provide Roswell's growing community with a high-quality water to meet current and future water demands. We also want to enhance self-sufficiency and limit the dependence on adjacent water systems, and maintain our financial stability while also providing outstanding customer service. So goal 1, provide Roswell's growing community with high-quality water to meet current and future water demands. I'm not going to read all the bullet points. I'm just going to pull out a couple. We want to continue to replace the aging infrastructure. It's also important to note that the plant is now 5 years old, and we're already requiring more maintenance, and eventually the equipment is going to need to be replaced in the upcoming years. Also, we monitor future regulations. So one of the new regulations, I'm sure many of you have heard of, is the update to the lead and copper rule. As part of this rule, we are required to create a public-facing service line inventory, which needs to be completed by October 2024, with a plan in place to replace any lead service lines that are identified. This is not only on the public side. We have to have the inventory on the private side of the meter, the customer side. And that has to be part of the plan. So then in the coming months, we plan to be putting out a survey to our customers to help us identify the line material that's on their side of the meter, to better update our GIS so that we can have this public-facing service line inventory in place before the October 2024 deadline. Enhance self-sufficiency and limit dependence on adjacent water systems. On this one, I'm going to pull out the emergency generator for the water treatment plant. So I want to note that we have applied for funding via the American Recovery Plan Act through the state, and we should know if we're approved for the funding by the end of this month. We've also applied for funding through the American Recovery Plan Act for water line replacement as well. So we have 2 applications in. In October 2020, we had a huge storm come through Roswell, and it knocked the power out to our plant for 2 days. When the power was restored, it blew out some of our electronic drives that run our raw water pumps. Thus, the plant was down for 4 days. We had to purchase water from Fulton County for those 4 days while the plant was down. And it cost the city approximately $25,000 in repairs and purchase water costs. So having a generator in place when we have a power outage can keep the plant running without a skip. We also need to look at additional storage for backwashing and basin cleanings. And we're looking at the possibility of reutilizing the old flock set basins at our old plant for this purpose, thus giving us the ability to backwash all 4 filters in a day. Right now we're limited to 2. And provide a place for draining the water out of the current flock set basins to be able to clean them without taking the plant down for a day or 2. Maintain financial stability. We need to continue to review our rates on an annual basis. Right now, we have a 4% increase in rates for the next 2 fiscal years. It ends in FY24. We need to look at this and our operations and capital projects to make sure that our rates are in place to be able to cover these upcoming costs and meet our funding. We also need to look at other funding sources like community development block grants, the American Recovery Plan Act, the new infrastructure bill that was just released late last year, and Georgia Environmental Finance Authority. Provide outstanding customer service. So in 2020, we implemented iHydrant technology in our system. We put 8 in place just to pilot test them and see how they worked out. We were able to identify a major main break on Longleaf. We've caught roughly 3 people stealing water off a hydrant. But in 2021, M&H came to us and provided us with a great opportunity to be one of the first cities in the nation to have a fully implemented pressure monitoring iHydrant system in place. As part of this project, which is not in place right now, will be leak detection. So we have passive leak detection throughout the system where I'll get a snapshot each day of what's going on in the system and where potential leaks are at. We're hoping to have the leak detection in place by the end of this year. Then, we want to make sure we're maintaining our high level of customer service. So on the chart you see on the bottom left-hand corner, in 2020, calendar year 2020, our average response time to all emergency and after-hours calls was 106 minutes, less than 2 hours. Our goal is to maintain our average response time to 2 hours or less. Just last week, I ran it for 2021, and our average response time to all emergencies and after-hour calls was 87 minutes. So we have cut our response time down drastically. Now we'll entertain any questions that you may have.
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Chris, I won't bore you with my level of expertise in your chosen endeavor field, but I moved to Atlanta in 1986, and I sold underground water and sewer utilities for 6 years. So I used to have the great pleasure of dealing with excellent gentlemen like yourself, trying to peddle underground water and sewer pipe and water meters and the whole thing. So I have a certain affinity for great work. But in all seriousness, I don't think our residents have had the privilege of understanding what an incredible job that this city does and what an incredible job you guys do. So my hat's off to you, Sharon, Chris, Erica, Dan. You guys do it, all your folks. You do a fantastic job. And the biggest problem that you present for us, and you do present a problem, is that the more people find out about the city of Roswell's water, the more the people who live in Roswell are going to want to be on the water system. So you present a problem for us because you do such a damn good job. And so hats off to you. Sharon, I have a question for you. We've got something coming. Maybe are you asking for, is this relation to what we talked, is this the same, are you asking for what you asked us for at the end of orientation? Is that what this is about, or is that a separate item?
No, this is about giving you our plan for the next 5 years, reporting out on where we were 5 years ago and what progress we've made. The opportunity to look at the rates and the financial stability of the fund will come in February. I think right now we're scheduled in tentatively for February 14th. Ryan to bring the water fund to you and show you our forecast for the next 5 years and look at how our rates stack up against what our needs are.
Well, as a resident and as an elected official, public servant, it's so impressive to see the way you guys are innovative on all levels of your business model. It really is impressive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. A couple of questions. First, how many households out of all the households are on Roswell water versus Fulton County? I'm just curious, I always forget that. And then you guys are an enterprise fund, so if you can speak to that a little bit, or maybe Director Luckett can speak to that, how the enterprise fund works with relation to general fund or the money in and out. And the third question is, do you have a portion of funds that are going towards equipment replacement? Is there a kitty or a schedule for those obsolete when you have to change those equipment? Thank you.
I can definitely do that. So usually I give the 80-20, 80% on Fulton County, 20% on Roswell. It's actually it's really more 23% Roswell and 77 on Fulton County. It's just easier to say 80-20. I don't know if I want.
I'll take a run at it, and then Ryan can come and correct me. So we are in enterprise funds. We have water rates that's where is the source of all of our funding for all of the things that the water utility does. As far as equipment replacement goes, that's a part of that 5-year forecast that you're going to get to see in February that Ryan's going to present to you. He's asked us for that information. Chris has already provided to him what his plans are for the next 5 years for capital purchases, for equipment, for trucks, for pumps, for all those sorts of things we do, along with all of his operating costs. So that information has gone down to Ryan's folks, and they're working on it, and then they will meet with us. We'll get it firm, and then it'll come to you in February for your review.
Thank you.
So as an enterprise fund, you pay for yourselves, basically. There's no additional
Absolutely.
funding from.
We don't get general fund money. There are some services, obviously, that are provided to us. The finance department, we pay for, out of enterprise funds, we pay for a little bit of what they do, for having the attorneys work with us. So we pay out into all the other functions of the city out of our enterprise fund for their support of what we're doing.
Thank you. Any further question or comment? Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Can you tell me, because I truly don't know, what you have in mind on the updated lead and copper rule as far as, I mean, I figure you can get to the public spaces, but the private or residential, could you just expound on that a little bit?
So the plan is, well, what we've done already is we've started looking at our GIS, and any homes built after 1987, we're deeming non-lead, because lead was banned in 1986. Any homes prior to 1986, we're looking back to see, have we replaced the mains? If we've replaced the mains, we know that the lines are not now non-lead. Basically, you have to classify it lead, non-lead, galvanized, downstream. Galvanized that needs to be replaced because it's downstream of lead, or unknown. And unknown, you're going to treat as lead. Those are your four criteria. So what my staff has been doing while they're out there in the field fixing leaks, replacing meters, we're digging up 3 feet on the back side, on the customer side, to determine what type of material is there at that point in time. We're hoping that by reaching out to our customers and having them let us know, yeah, I've replaced my service line within after 1987, so we know we can deem that non-lead. Or no, it's the original service line, we don't know what it is. We're going to have to call that side of the line unknown, and we'll have to go and figure out what that is, whether it's us or maybe we contract that out. How quickly do we want to get this information in place? Our GIS analyst has already identified the homes built prior to 1986, and we've got them on a map. And we're going to go out and randomly, we've got a little back that we can back down on our side, we can back down on the customer side, determine what they've got. Now that's just going to tell me what they have at that point past the meter. I don't know if they've had a line replacement, like a section replaced, or what has happened inside the home. Have they used lead solder? If the home was built back in 1986, it may have copper piping with lead soldering. So it's going to be important for the customers to help us identify what they have in their home so that we can get this list compiled. Now, in the 16 years I've been over the water distribution division, I have yet to see any lead service lines on our side. I've never seen any goosenecks. So at this point, I'm about 90% confident in saying that we don't have any lead in our system on the public side. We still need to go through the process to verify that on the public side. With our line replacements that we've done over the years, we have eliminated any potential lead that could have been on the public side at that point. But then again, we were never concerned with what was going on the customer side of the meter. And then as part of the planning for how to fund this, that's something we're going to have to talk about. Is this something the city will have to pay for? Is this something that the customer will be responsible for? Is this something we go out for grants to help pay for? These are all on the table and need to be discussed. My first priority is finding out if there's lead in the service, if there's lead in our service area, and then at that point figure out how do we get it out of there.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much. Any further questions, comment this time? All right. And we'll then ask if we're prepared to move this item forward. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to move this item forward.
Mayor Wilson, thank you. Motion and second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you very much. Passes unanimously. We'll move this item forward. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And then the next item, consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to sign a contract amendment to the curbside recycling and yard waste contract with waste management. Unanimous, ayes so.
Thank you. I'd like to start this item by introducing a couple members of my teams. We're going to switch gears over to our solid waste folks. I'd like to invite Nick Bizzello, our solid waste manager, to come up and join me so you can meet him. This is Nick. I'm also going to ask Steve Edwards from Waste Management to come up here and join me at the table. I suspect that maybe some of the discussion, these two fellows will have the answers to your question. I'm also going to let you know Brian Watson's in the audience, and there might be a couple of questions that he might be best positioned to answer. To just reacquaint you with the Solid Waste Division. Once again, we are an enterprise fund, so we are self-supporting. Our rates support everything we do. We offer or provide residential, commercial garbage collection for the city of Roswell with city staff. We have a transfer station at the Hembry location. We actually have a new one under construction, so look for a ribbon cutting for sometime this summer for a new transfer station. But it is actually a contracted service for us. We have Republic Services working with us that they manage and operate the transfer station for us, and then they are responsible for hauling the waste to the landfill. We have our recycling center up on Maxwell Road. That's also run by city staff. And then lastly, tonight we're going to be talking about the curbside recycling and yard waste contract, which is held by Waste Management, formerly Advanced Disposal, ADS. And like I said, Steve's here to help us out with this. And I want to just take a moment, and you'll notice from your packet, I've added a few things. There's been some updates in the last couple of weeks, so I wanted to give you a little more information, but provide you with some headlines of what's been going on in the solid waste world here in the last year or two. Going into December, actually I can remember this like it was yesterday, and maybe some of you were on this webinar with me. ICMA offered a webinar in December of 2019, and it was a webinar on solid waste contract issues. So I thought, hey, better get on this and see what's going on. It was offered by Republic Services actually did the webinar, and at the time they were talking about the pressure that they were experiencing on the contracts that they held with municipalities, cities, just like us, due to the ban that China had placed on our material in 2018. They basically, up until that time, had been accepting almost all of our recycled materials, and that was driving a commodity cost, which made this a business that you could make some money in. Hence the recycling push, a lot of people looking for ways to recycle material, and there was some money to be made. In 2018, when China banned that material and put quality standards into place, it really turned that recycling market upside down. At the time, these folks are tied into contracts with us, which are multi-year contracts. Those terms are set, and it was causing some difficulties for them, and so they were basically making those of us on the other side of the table aware that they were experiencing challenges. So that happened in December of 2019, and then of course we all know what happened in the first quarter of 2020 with the advent of COVID. As COVID became a reality, we were experiencing not only people becoming ill, but we also had people living at home and cleaning out basements and garages and generating more garbage than they had done previously. So it was kind of a terrific storm, if you will, kind of these perfect storms that was happening in the solid waste world. An increase in material, staff challenges, and then the next thing happened where people were staying at home, and there were some opportunities for people to stay home and not work. And that also created a labor shortage for folks like Waste Management, and we ourselves have had some serious vacancy issues that we've talked about in the past. On top of that, we had people purchasing most of their product from remotely if we could, because we didn't want to go to the store, and so there were opportunities for folks with CDL driver licenses to perhaps make more money by changing their employer and leaving their garbage trucks and going and working over the road. And we've seen that in our own solid waste division. So all of those things created a series of headlines that we've seen here around the metro, where municipalities such as ourselves were being faced with requests from either the companies we were in relationship with or perhaps our our contracts were expiring, it was time to recompete, and we were seeing a dramatic change in what the cost of service was going to be. The two red headlines that I'm sharing with you tonight are things that have been happening just here in the last couple of weeks with the Omicron surge. Down in Atlanta, they were in a situation where 50% of their workforce was out, and they're experiencing basically trash in the streets. And if it was hitting WSB and a number of the newspapers, we're very blessed that here in Roswell we have not been confronted with that, although we did have a service alert from Waste Management last week for recycling and yard waste, letting folks know they were running behind, to just be patient, keep your things out, they'll get there. Republic Services, unfortunately, over in Gwinnett, had to actually suspend bulky trash pickup, recycling, yard waste, because at the end of the day, you want to get that garbage off the streets, and you can live with some bags of leaves and twigs and those kinds of things. And the recycling, nobody likes to do it, but can go into the garbage can if you have to. So those are some things that are happening right now, right around us. Just also wanted to talk specifically about the city of Alpharetta. Obviously, they're right next door. We get compared to them a lot. They're in a little different situation than us. They actually contract out their garbage, yard waste, and recycling completely. They don't have any city staff doing that work for them. In early 2021, their provider, Republic, requested a 25% increase to continue service. They, unlike us, did not have that one-year notification clause in the contract, so they basically were put on notice and had to quickly move to either accept that or do something different. They did accept it, and they had to pass on an increase to their customers right away, and then they quickly went out to RFP to get a new contract into place. The good news is they had 5 bidders, which was kind of news to us, because sometimes you don't really know who's necessarily in the market, who has an interest in coming into this marketplace to provide these kinds of services. But at the end of the day, they did have a fairly significant increase. I did want to also let you know that in your packets, we had it in there as $29.76 per month, which is the information that we had provided at one of our previous committees/work sessions that we've had on this topic. We went in, took a little bit closer look at what's actually out there right now, and is actually $25.65 a month, which simply suggests to me that perhaps they were able to absorb some of that increase, because those were the actual numbers that came out of the response to the RFP that went out on the streets. Last thing I'll just note on this one, their yard waste set-outs are less than ours. Ours are more generous than that, so that also figures in. Just want to give a little bit of background. So how did we get to here? So in May of 2021, Steve came for a visit and let us know that they were in a situation where they were going to need to ask for some additional rate increase, in addition to what they would normally receive as a part of the escalation clause that's built into this 7-year contract. And at the time, he was asking for $2.42 per home. Our response to him was, hey, Steve, what can you do without changing any price? Is there a service change that we could put out there and hold the price exactly where it is? And the response was that he could change us to every other week recycling with no glass and reduce yard waste to 1 cubic yard. So we brought that to a work session in August and spent about an hour and 25 minutes talking with our council and mayor at the time. And brought that information. At the time, what we were hearing was that there wasn't an interest in necessarily changing the service level that was out there for the residents. At the same time, we put out a survey to the residents and got back just some preliminary information at that point that the residents were largely very satisfied with the service that they were receiving, and have a slide coming up that talks about that a little bit more. We came back in October, and at that time we had really gotten into the details of what Waste Management was dealing with, and we were negotiating, and we were able to get the request from $2.42 a home down to $1.80. And then we still had some contract terms that weren't quite sorted out, but we thought it was important to get back with council and mayor and see what the thoughts were at that point. As far as the solid waste survey goes, we had almost 2,000 respondents in a little over a week, which community relations was dumbfounded. They had not seen that level of response that quickly to any other survey the city had ever put out, which just goes to show you that, first off, we're enormously grateful to the folks that took the time to actually take the survey and give us the feedback. And as you can see, we were able to determine that of the folks that responded, about 90% of them were participating weekly in recycling, and 95% were satisfied with the service. Many of the comments were how much they love our recycling center, which really, we were really talking about curbside, but it was certainly nice to hear how much folks enjoy going to our recycling center. On the arts-based side, as expected, the participation was a little less, but again, still a fairly high participation rate, and we saw about a third are participating weekly, about another third monthly, and then the other folks kind of sort in between all that. What we also heard out of that survey was desire for education, education, education. People really truly want to understand what can they put in the into that recycling bin, and so that is some information that we have used and leveraged, and Brian and his team have done an even deeper dive on all of that survey results to create a solid waste education plan, which we've actually already begun. Perhaps some of you, I'm sure you follow the City of Roswell social media sites, but you probably saw we had one out for Game of Thrones, kind of the theme about how to handle your fall leaves. That was kind of a cute original one. And then we had another one where there was an elf and, who's the other character? Kirby, I'm sorry, Kirby. Kirby and the elf were trying to figure out what to do with all the holiday packaging and how to recycle properly. So those were cute and trying to get that education across in a way that people actually watch and digest. So moving ahead, as far as the waste management contract goes itself, after we got through that committee, we digested all that we heard at committee. We looked a little closer at the customer service survey and how folks were really saying they really like what they're getting. And at that point, we're continuing to watch the inflation projections moving up, and we're watching our own vacancy rate challenges that we've had here within our solid waste division. And we got to a point where we felt it was important to finalize the negotiations with Waste Management. And that's what you see in front of you is the Waste Management Contract Amendment, which is what we settled on was the $1.80 per home. We agreed to the water, sewer, trash CPI in lieu of a combination of CPI and fuel, which is what's in the contract today. But the important thing is the cap of 4% remains unchanged, which is important for us for our planning purposes and budgeting. Waste Management signed that contract amendment on December 1st, 2021, and it is at this point waiting for mayor and council to execute on it if that is your desire. The amendment would go into effect July 1st, 2022, and I'm sure the question is, what does that really mean for us? So from a solid waste bill breakdown, I've got two different breakdowns up there for you. So the solid waste breakdown of the bill today shows about 59% of that bill comes to the city of Roswell for all the things that we're doing for our residents, and the balance is there for waste management. And you can see it grows a little bit from, we're getting about 59%, and we're gonna be reduced to about 54% under the new arrangement with waste management. What that really means is we have a $23.39 per month bill right now that's for sanitation service. The planned fiscal year 23 increase was 3%, and that's what we have programmed based on the pro forma and what we had been expecting, which would have resulted in a $24.10 a month bill for a 71-cent increase. With the proposed contract amendment, and the increase is going to be forecasted at 5% for the fiscal year 23, which would result in a $24.56 per month bill. And then again, this is no change in service, all things staying the same, and that's an increase of additional 46 cents to accept this contract amendment. for a total of $1.17 over the bill we're getting today. All that being said, I think one of the things that's important is, as far as the contract amendment, our suggestion would be that if you're prepared to execute the contract amendment, that I would prefer that you had an opportunity to see the forecast that Ryan is preparing so that you can see how this impacts the next 5 years once that's solidified. And right now, we're tentatively looking at that for February 14th, which is a Monday night work session. And if you were comfortable, we could move that to a February 14th mayor and council meeting immediately following that work session, if that's acceptable.
Thank you, Ms. Izo. Mayor Wilson?
Sharon, would you repeat that last request real quick for me? Sorry.
Yes, sir.
The very last request.
So the contract amendment would need to move to mayor and council for an agenda vote. This would be the agenda vote to go to mayor and council for your approval for the execution. But my suggestion would be, rather than it moving to the next mayor and council, I would suggest you give yourself an opportunity to see what the fund performance is going to be over the next 5 years. And that would be at a work session that Ryan's preparing for. Tentatively, we're scheduled for February 14th, but I know that schedule has not been finalized.
I think that's a great idea. Do we get to see Steve again? Because he looks like he's having a great time being here.
Fun, yes, sir.
Yeah, he's just enjoying himself. It's not like being a vendor coming in and asking for money from the
I'm
public.
used to this, I really am.
I think that's a great idea. And I know Mr. Knighton is not biting, he's not chewing on the, can't wait to sign this contract to put himself, memorialize his name and my name on this contract as, yes, and for our residents to be so happily. But I think everybody understands, like, you gotta take care of the trash. Bottom line, we've done a good job with it, done a great job with it, and we gotta keep doing a great job with it. And I think that's a non-negotiable issue. So I know that you guys have done a great job at looking at other vendors, but you've got a great relationship. Waste Management's delivered for us, Steve, and will continue to deliver for us. I know there's tremendous pressure in the reality of the marketplace today, yet you guys have continued to deliver for the city of Roswell, and hopefully we're a preferred city from a vendor perspective that you do take care of and will take care of, particularly if we find ourselves obviously raising a fee on our residents, that obviously they have some value that say, hey, these folks are good to us.
Our regional office is in Roswell.
I saw that. So if your trash didn't get picked up either, right? Recycling.
Mayor, it has been a tough time to be in the garbage industry. It is unprecedented times, and we're on the struggle bus. And like Sharon talked about, we appreciate everybody's patience and understanding. But I think what we do every morning is communicate with Nick and say, Nick, I think we're behind here, we're okay here. And I think that's what it's all about. I really do. During these crazy times, having a partner like Roswell and communicating with each other, that's what we should be doing all along.
Well, we've got great staffs doing a great job of that. Thank you guys for doing that. And Sharon, I'm going to recommend that we move on your motion and table this, right, Randy, to, what's the specific that you're saying, Sharon?
Well, my recommendation would be that the motion is to move it to council, but to move it to the council once you've had an opportunity to have your work session on the fund updates.
That means we don't take it to council until after the work session, correct?
Correct.
That would, the work session, when would the work session date be?
Randy, how would you like to form that motion?
Yeah, I see Dan walking briskly. So let's see what
I'd
Dan
like to
would
request
suggest.
a vote now to bring it forward to a future council meeting following the work session.
So there's a request to move the forward tonight, to move to a future work session, is that correct?
Future council
meeting.
Council vote.
Council vote.
After the work session, so
You want to make a motion to
I'll
that
make a
effect?
motion to do that, yes.
Okay, all right, Mayor Wilson has made a motion to that effect. I believe is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion, but
Okay.
we have questions and comments.
Councilmember Palermo has seconded the motion. Now, any further discussion? Councilmember Palermo, okay.
Thank you. So, yeah, unfortunately, I think the mayor summed it up pretty well. What was certainly clear in the fourth calendar quarter last year is, of course, and obviously, residents do not want to see their bill go up. And also what came up was residents certainly do not want to see the frequency of the recycling pickup go down, and they do not want to see their glass get removed. And so, therefore, obviously, that's what creates this difficult situation. So a question I have for you, Steve, is, and I think it was you last time here. And,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so thank you. So I remember you were very clear in kind of explaining why that it's not feasible for there to be an opportunity for residents to opt in or opt out. So that made sense when you just said how that wasn't feasible. How would you track, so many different scalability, et cetera. What wasn't clear to me is there was discussion of perhaps the yard waste, reducing that frequency, whether it be seasonality or just changing to monthly, biweekly, whatever that might be. How come that didn't represent any real cost savings? I believe from what it sounded like is that technically the cost would go down a tiny bit, but not really a visible amount. Can you help me understand why?
Can I add to that same question would be, sorry to interrupt, but it would also be going, the cubic, you got 6 bags versus 10 bags versus 12 bags. Just that would fit right into that same question I was gonna ask. So, yeah, reduction of that doesn't look like, you guys believe, I appreciate how hard you've worked on this, and this is a line item question, but I agree. Why is it is there not a big difference in price between saying you can have 1 cubic yard of 6 bags out versus 10 bags versus frequency?
Let me hear you.
I'll let you take a run at it.
Thank you. We looked at every which way to work with you guys. And the amount of yard waste that residents have now, they enjoy that. They enjoy that ability to do that. Trying to educate the residents to taper that down would absolutely make us look really, really bad. And probably a reflection on mayor and council as well. We thought that it'd be best to keep it as it is and give that slight increase. We had a larger increase at first, but we negotiated and put that number down. The way recycling costs are now, it costs more to process a ton of recyclables versus bury a ton of garbage or yard waste. And we looked at that variable, council member, but we just couldn't squeeze that in. I hope I answered that question the way you understand it, but we did look at that option. And it wasn't much of a savings.
And even same thing with reduced frequency, that you wouldn't have to have an employee or a truck, out as many days per month.
We looked at that too. That the volume is really what drives things in Roswell.
All right. And then the other question, this one is more for staff. I mean, just, obviously just so important to have this continued service for residents. Remind me, there's still always the opportunity with the way the contract works to just ensure that it is competitive and that there are, as there are other providers, and it seems like there's really not that many, kind of looking at the different stuff. But help me understand how that works with the proposed agreement.
So we're in a 7-year contract with Waste Management. We're about halfway through it. We inked that in 2018, I believe. And each year, we each have an opportunity to walk away from the contract because it renews each year because, there's a budget and we can't commit to something that bridges more than the 1 year. And what Waste Management effectively did in the spring of 21 was let us know that they could not continue in the contractual relationship without a price adjustment. We have the same opportunity to do that if for whatever reason we're not funded or we don't have the budget. And, David would be able to tell us exactly under what circumstances we could put them on notice. But each year we have the opportunity to sever the relationship. Right now is a tough time in this marketplace. As you can see, there's a lot of turmoil. And I don't know that it's the best time, I don't know if you're asking this
No,
question.
no,
or heading
I'm
to
not,
this
no,
question,
I'm just making, understanding the contract aspect. Ultimately, they chose to leverage the opportunity to sever the relationship because they felt Roswell wasn't paying enough for all the, everything that's going on, and it sounds like vice versa. If there was the opportunity for a, great service, lower costs, all that stuff, it sounds like we have that equal ability, so thank you. And I actually really want to give staff credit for making it a much more attractive contract than what it was back in Q4. So I certainly appreciate, Waste Management in that, but also staff's, kind of just effort in that negotiation and hard work in that negotiation.
Yes, Mayor Wilson, I believe you may have had.
I'm just going to say, obviously the practicality is we were leveraged, but understanding that Waste Management was leveraged as well. Waste Management's going through what everybody in America understands. There's a labor tsunami happening in certain businesses. This business is one of those businesses where there is a labor tsunami. And to your point, Waste Management from a contractual person unquestionably leveraged it, right? If the tables were turned on their part, you guys are doing due diligence on pursuing other vendors. You have established a relationship with Waste Management. You are pursuing other vendors all the time, just like Waste Management is pursuing, can they do better business can they make more money on another client? It is a matter of business, right? If they can make more money on another client and have less headaches, they drop us like a potato because that's just business. Same thing for us. We have to continue to pursue other vendors, but you also have long-term relationships where you try to say, what's the best interest for both parties long-term? I believe you've been seeking that from a standpoint of trying to keep that continuity, the best interest of the citizens of Roswell, and that Waste Management's a good vendor. So I just want to be careful when we start, because I have some sympathy for you, even though you're a significantly large business, and understanding that you have been going through a nightmare, and that our trash has continued and our recycling has continued to get picked up on a timely basis. A lot of cities can't say that. So mucho kudos to you guys for keeping that done and keeping that relationship. And just from a business perspective, to Michael's point is, of course, you're pursuing other vendors. And if you can get a better vendor to do it for less money, with greater services on an ongoing basis, you're going to make that decision. I do believe in the best interest of the citizens of Roswell. Just like Steve would drop us like a hot potato. If he can find a client that's going to pay more money and he has to go to less. That's just reality. So won't sugarcoat it too much. But we're glad you're here, Steve. Hang in there with us, baby. And we look forward to you dropping this price real quick. I know Sherry wants to report that.
All right, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Morgan.
Was there anything, when we went through this negotiation, was there anything that was removed from the recycling menu that we can put in the can? Or did you stay with the same list of items?
Everything's the same. What we heard from the residents through the survey and through our conversations with council was that there was not an appetite to make a change to what goes in the can. I think down the line, we might get there. That at a certain point, we're going to need to face the reality that perhaps there's just not a marketplace, there's not a use, there's not a recycling purpose and a business motive to some of the recyclables, and we see it at our own recycling center because we're tracking those commodities because we're collecting all of these things and we know what there's a market for. So at some point there might be there will likely be a time to look at what's going in that can and making sure that the things that go in it are advantageous and make sense.
The reason I asked that question is it's a two-part question. Some people have asked for the stickers of the cans to be replaced, faded, cracked, and peeled off. And one of the ways that you were talking about education is to show the kids how to utilize the program. The sticker is the best way, obviously. So I didn't know how to do that. If it would be through your bill with a mailer insert. If your sticker needs replacing, it's in this scope, as compared to having some guy right on the back of the truck walking every single one doing inspections. I don't think that would be the best use of time. But just thinking. The second part is there a appetite for styrofoam at all?
Now, I'm gonna pass this one to Nick. I'm gonna let him answer this question, because
thought I was gonna get away with
he's
this.
gonna get passionate about this one.
So, well, no, not Kirby. So styrofoam, you know, we get this question a lot, can we put styrofoam curbside? The answer is no. It's not worth much. You purchased a styrofoam densifier a couple of years ago. And so when we do get styrofoam at the recycling center, the hard styrofoam, if you can break it, you know, it gets packed around televisions, things of that nature. You bring that to the recycling center, we take a 53-foot truck full of that and we compress it down to a little cube, and we actually make a little bit of money off that. So it's not so much the money necessarily, to be honest with you, it is the fact that it's recycled, but that it can be recycled that way versus just thrown away. If Waste Management does get it, it just gets thrown away. So the answer is always for everything. Sharon's gonna kill me later. The answer is always for everything, bring it to the recycling center, just like your glass and the rest.
All right, thank you. Mayor Wilson?
Steve, let me ask you a question. So you said the regional office is in Roswell?
Yes, sir.
So you're a big company. Who makes the pricing decisions? Is that happening in your office or happening above you?
It's happening above me in North Carolina. They're looking at all the contracts, and we evaluate them, and just like you talked about, we saw the labor shortage, we're having to pay labor more, the recycling processing costs went up. Struggling to find qualified drivers has kind of driven that pricing spike we're seeing now.
So from a strategic perspective, kind of just piggybacking on Councilman Palermo's perspective, we don't have any leverage currently, right? And this decision's being made at is it a corporate office or?
No, more like a regional office.
Regional office. So it's being made in a regional office. So we really don't have any leverage other than, we've got you guys, we have a relationship with you guys, but you guys aren't making the decision on who gets to play at the end of the day, are you?
I think we're looking at all of our accounts, Mayor, all of our municipal accounts. I have talked to many cities around the Atlanta metro area. Some are small like yours at $1.80. Others are asking for $4 more a home. So it varies. I think the big companies like Waste Management Republic and some of the others, we're all evaluating the pricing structure right now as it is because of the perfect storm like Sharon mentioned. The folks at the Roswell Regional Office, they have a say-so in these pricing issues, the calls we have. But it's not driven from our corporate office in Houston, Texas. It's driven for Phoenix, Arizona. It's driven somewhat regionally and locally, if that's the question you're asking.
No, I just know that business people make decisions, often even in corporate worlds, they make them in silos, right? Somebody at a corporate center or a regional center makes a decision based upon certain criteria.
Right.
And there can be people in the field who love the account.
Yeah.
And the decision is made for other reasons to say, que sera, sera.
I see where you're going. This was a team approach call with our division general managers, district managers that service the metro area, plus our key Roswell people. So it wasn't a decision in a glass house. So it was a local decision.
And just to kind of further echo Councilman Palermo's perspective,
If I'm in your shoes, Sharon, your shoes, I love my guy. And I mean that. He's taking care of me, he's delivering for me. But I also have to know, to your point, that behind the scenes, that business is making business decisions which in the best interest of their business above the regional level. So kind of the responsibility of the city council mayors, the elected people of the city and the top ends of the city staff. So we have to continue to pursue things in the best interest of the city of Roswell from a pricing mechanism, from an execution mechanism. And sometimes it does go beyond,
as the unfortunate saying, it's not personal, it's just business.
and that's really what this comes down to at the end of the day. I do believe in having great relationships, developing relationships, but sometimes somebody above says, nah, we're gonna move it somewhere else. And I think the reality of that is we are a leveraged client right now, like a lot of people.
You certainly have the choice to go out for RFPs.
Yes, we do. And I'm just saying, we have to be real, that we are leveraged right now. So, we're gonna be agreeing to a price increase, it sounds like, and we're gonna have a lot of mad residents at us as a consequence of it. And you know that. So, the motion's been on the floor, yes, sir.
Motion, it has been motioned, seconded, we've had discussion. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. All approve, and that is unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, that does conclude the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting agenda. With that, I'll entertain a motion of adjournment. Motion, Councilmember Palermo. Second, Councilmember Hall. All those in favor? Thank you very much.